What's going on, go-getters? In this week's episode, we talked to Erik O'Day, a family man, world traveler, and teacher within Wilkes-Barre.
Mr. O'Day was a teacher of mine when I was back in high school, and I'm sure as many of you guys can relate, Mr. O'Day was very impactful. He talked about things that were even beyond the classroom sometimes, and you know what? I'm just going to let you guys tune into this podcast. We talked about some crazy things, even had some debates, and it was crazy. So tap in, like, subscribe, share.
Absolutely, guys. Love.
Boom! Yo, Kev, can I switch it up for a little bit?
Go for it.
All right, so I wanted to give O'Day an intro. I wanted to tell the people that O'Day was a teacher of mine my senior year of high school.
Yeah.
And he was one of those teachers that might be able to give you a real pivot in the direction that you take in your life. I think I heard some type of proverb that said that a good teacher doesn't give you the answers, he shows you the path, or he shows you a way. And in your class, I must say that there was times where I really had to ask myself real questions. And I do believe that the most important conversations that you have are the ones that you have with yourself. And it was interesting being in a time period of my life where I knew that this was my introduction to the real world. And so in your class, we talked about the real world. And I appreciate that. I appreciate
Thanks, man.
The time you gave us. I appreciate the questions you asked us. I appreciate you letting us express ourselves creatively and individually. And I'm grateful that you gave us a vessel and the right questions and the right wisdom from your experiences of life. So thank you very much, Mr. O'Day.
Oh, yeah.
I'm honored, man. That's amazing.
Yeah. So you're a teacher, or you were a teacher in the Wilkes-Barre Area School District, and now you are a head teacher in the Wilkes-Barre Area School District.
Right.
So and you're from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. You went to Wilkes University.
Yep.
So let's try to go from the beginning. So you're a young kid in Myers High School. What are the energies like in Wilkes-Barre City? What is the culture like in the 80s at this time, right? 80s, 90s?
Yeah, so I mean, I was born in the 80s, coming of age in the 90s.
Yeah.
And going to Myers was a really, really special experience,
Yeah.
I mean, you guys were there. You kind of, I'm sure you felt the energy in the place,
For sure.
Did you have parents that went there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, both of my parents went to GAR.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Did you tell them you're coming here today?
No, I didn't, but I will, though. I'm sure they'll both see it.
Yeah.
They're both huge fans of GAR.
Nice. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, and that's the thing. Obviously, the last couple of years with this transition to the new high school.
Yeah.
There were some really tough moments for people trying to let go of the past.
Yeah.
Let go of some of those traditions, some of those memories that people had.
Yeah.
And I remember going through those last couple of weeks at Myers as a teacher and thinking about what the place felt like as a student. And I didn't do that as much as you probably would have thought I did as a teacher there. Like my time as a teacher was my time as a teacher, at the school. And my time as a student was my time as a student. And they weren't necessarily merged always to be one thing. With the exception of like graduation week.
Yeah.
I love graduations.
Interesting.
I love them.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, because it's like, you don't know. Okay, so a place like Myers and a place like Wilkes-Barre area now, when you see kids walk across that stage, you've got so many different types of futures coming. You know what I mean? Like for some, that is the absolute biggest moment of their lives, and it will probably stay that way. That might be their biggest personal accomplishment.
Yeah.
For others, it's just the start of their academic or their professional careers. But it doesn't really matter because when you look on stage, everybody's happy.
Yeah.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
you're celebrating.
Yeah, exactly. You're not thinking about, it's just like a stress-free day.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
And what really takes me, and I get super emotional about it. Like when I looked into the crowd, at Myers all those years, I'd be on the side of the stage, and last year in Wilkes-Barre area, I was on the stage. And that was surreal because it was inside the arena. It was gigantic.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
And seeing the families is like, it's really powerful.
That's cool.
Because it's just, you could just see like such pride.
Yeah.
That's cool. Kev, that was interesting for him because he didn't have a graduation.
Yeah, I graduated solo.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
2020.
Virtual you did, right?
I graduated. Nobody else besides my mother and father were able to be there.
In
Right.
Watkins, right?
Because I think you had
Greebeck. I had Greebeck with
Okay.
me.
15 people per building at that point. I think that was the rule by health codes.
What we had, it was like you had to go on a dock and you had to like schedule a date and time over like a 2-week period for you to like come. And they were literally doing graduations like every 20 to 30 minutes, like with one individual. Because how many, like in a graduating class at Myers, how many people would you say were in a graduating class? Like,
I mean, at the last few years of Myers, I don't know, maybe 160.
So you got to think you're doing like 160 individual graduations. Yeah. That's crazy.
That's not necessarily how many graduates. That's how many people maybe take to the stage.
Yeah.
But to your point, that's something.
Yeah.
That was the only graduation I had nothing to do with because I wasn't allowed in the building because it weren't,
It worked out good for me. It was a great day, and I had a great remainder of the day after it. So it all worked out for me.
Right.
But it does suck.
I mean, I don't know how to say this without sort of, I don't want to diminish the day that you had.
Yeah.
But I saw some of the other graduation ceremonies that they had that year, and they were like in the drive-in, the drive-in for Hanover and stuff. Yeah. And I don't know, all that stuff just felt strange too. There was no real easy answer. So at least you got to be on that stage.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
Got to wear my cap and gown. I at least got to receive my diploma and everything on stage. So for what it was okay. I can't complain too much.
Right.
And luckily, my senior year, I got out the way pretty much everything I really cared about. Like my football season was over. Everything, even like the school year. I wasn't a big school kid when I was in school.
Yeah.
I wish I would have been more now.
I want to come back to that statement.
But yeah, we absolutely will.
I want to come back to that.
But yeah, I mean, even like given where I was at in life my senior year, it's almost like that was the best thing that could have happened to me specifically because it was pretty much the catalyst for all of this and like all of my personal development going forward. Like COVID and missing out the rest of that senior year really helped me.
Yeah.
So I have an interesting take on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember Lydia. She's the only student from that year I went to go see.
Really?
And it was all of her teachers showed up. Her mom invited everybody. And I think you were there, right?
I think, I was there.
And it was like we were outside the building and we all had masks on.
Yeah,
and,
it was.
And it was and it was like a super hot day.
Yep.
And I just remember thinking like, this is so weird. The whole thing was bizarre, no doubt about it. But, it's like what we were talking off camera before. It's it's like a once in 100-year moment that we lived through there.
True.
And it almost seemed like, in an odd way, it was like a weird end to our arc as like, I don't know, like our chapter in Myers. It just seemed like it was perfect for us because of just how crazy everything was the entire time we were there.
Right. I could tell you that the year after you left, it was also strange.
Yeah.
Right. Like we went in September, late September, I think it was, and then got out mid-October. And then that was it until March, when they started having students come back.
Yeah.
And that was the year that we almost exclusively taught from home, right? Because we didn't really teach from home the year that you were there. It was sort of because there was no playbook.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
We didn't really have.
You were coming up with it as they went, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I remember having a conversation with a former student teacher of mine who teaches in Hazleton now. Yeah. And I said to him, because he brought this whole thing up, and I don't know if he like called me or something. And we were having a quick chat about it, and he was like, we're built for this. And I'm thinking to myself, are we built for this? I don't know. Like, obviously now I think emotionally we were not built for this. But even technology wise, he was like, we've got people have cameras on their computers now and you can learn from home. And yes, it was possible to teach from home. Yeah. And if you guys want to talk more about that, I'm willing to do that. But it still wasn't normal. Yeah. You know what I mean? It didn't feel normal to do that. And you at least saw the classroom your last year. You know what I mean? A lot of those students that graduated the following year never saw the classroom.
That's crazy to think about.
You know what I mean? They were home. The classroom was home.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that a way to learn? Like, is that the most effective way to teach somebody material or introduce them to new material?
Sure, it could be for some, but probably not for most.
It's probably a low percentage
but
of
it's like the same way some people don't learn very well in a classroom setting, and some people learn way better in like a one-on-one setting.
True.
So it's like there's differences to it, but I definitely think the in-classroom thing had to have been better than that.
True.
Just for productivity. Like most kids are waking up, opening a laptop in their sheets with no clothes on, like half asleep.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, one of the problems was like, this is sort of on the legal side of things. you didn't necessarily have to have them always put their camera on.
Yeah.
And you didn't necessarily want them to put their camera on.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons, you didn't really want to see what was going on at home. And it was just, you felt, to me, they were like, a lot of these students were just like icons.
Yeah.
You know, like the names and faces didn't exist.
That's weird.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean? They were people that were they were embarrassed, so they would type in the chat.
Yeah.
And so what I did that year, are we okay to segue to this now?
Yeah,
All
sure.
right. So what I did that year was I switched a lot of my work to writing. Because it made no sense to me to do social studies through multiple choice, right? Like that seemed irrelevant in that year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So almost every single assessment that I gave was something where they had to write and express and share so that I could see if it was their own thoughts, so that I could see if it was sort of authentic, if they were really paying attention.
Yeah.
You get where I'm going with this? And also to kind of learn about them, to kind of get a feel for them personally, because I didn't get that sort of visual of like, this is the student that kind of is like, keeps their head down and stays back. This is the student that like, you know what I mean? Loves to raise their hand. I didn't have that.
Does that help you a lot as a teacher? Like seeing how kids specifically act in like a classroom setting, whether they be like the shy kid, the kid that sits in the back of the room,
it has
or
to,
the
right?
kid that's always answering questions. Like, how does that help you as a teacher?
Yeah, I mean, well, ideally, right? Like if we're just talking about it practically speaking, you want a student who's engaged and paying attention. But there's also a lot of students that have anxiety.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Incredible anxiety. And they're not comfortable in that class. They don't really know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's days where I would talk about things that I know I lost half the class. You know what I mean? And to see the looks on their faces is a lot easier to understand if they're sort of digesting it versus just that computer screen.
But so,
You know?
when you were giving the assessments via a computer screen, you had to make that assessment from the writings that they project or that they turned in. Right?
Correct. Yeah.
That was probably a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and I mean,
There's no verbal cues. It's all like how they're expressing
Words
their
on a
work.
screen.
Yeah.
right. And I would use a lot of videos, which was my way of sort of saying you could stop and rewind if you're not, because I know sometimes they would be too afraid to ask me to repeat what I was talking about. So I would use a lot of videos. There's like resources, Khan Academy and stuff like that existed. Just these boring corporations that make these things that you could use. But the idea was I wanted them to be able to still sort of self-pace a little bit. So, but I mean, being a social studies teacher, it had to be easier than like math or like science, where maybe you need to like do experiments or something like that.
Yeah.
At least my class has always sort of been a discussion.
Yeah.
As you said.
That's why I liked it. That's why it worked a lot, because I remember we would move our desks and you would like sit on the outskirts or you would sit in the middle of the class.
Yeah.
And you would just like throw a ball and see what would happen.
Yeah.
We would be like, sometimes we got heated. Sometimes like
those were the best.
Like, no, if you didn't see it, like you'd be fighting across the class.
Those were the best.
Yeah.
But
I feel like that for me was the best way to learn, is like learning through discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that was most effective for me.
Yeah. And you don't know it, but you're learning from your peers.
Yeah.
You're learning from yourself.
Because you're getting new perspectives. Like you're seeing it in ways that you've never experienced, because that person had a different background than me and that person has a different culture than me, and it's different. So their interpretation of the subject that we're discussing is different. Now I'm introduced to that.
Sure.
Which is cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember when I taught social science seminar, I guess it must have been 2014. Michael Brown, Erik Gardner, all those guys that with the police situations were happening. And it was like, I could remember, you could feel the tension between like African-American students, African-American male students and other students. And you could feel like that they were ready to explode in some of these conversations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They were ready to pop.
Yeah.
And it kind of made me realize, like, man, I don't know what this is like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they were telling personal stories of incidents they had, and and it wasn't a conversation ever. I hope it was never taken as like the cops are bad or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just a conversation about like, you don't understand what it feels like for to have to be in my shoes. They're talking to me like a white male. You know what I mean? And those were some eye-opening chats.
Yeah. I'm sure from the teacher's standpoint in that room, in that setting, you learned a lot.
Oh, 100%.
In all of these different topics and all of these like civics topics, like you were introduced to now new worldviews.
Yeah, all the time. All the time. I mean, there's so many things, right? Like all of the hot button issues that are in politics, when they come up in a classroom like that, they sort of get, you erase the politicians from the conversation.
Yeah.
And you just talk about the substance. You know what I mean? And you talk about like, well, let's discuss this topic. And in those conversations, it's like you versus me and me versus you, and who feels they're right and wrong. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not talking about like Democrats and Republicans or like, you know, Obama or Trump and Biden. You follow me? It was like, here's the topic. Let's have this chat.
Yeah.
And those were great.
Yeah.
Those were great chats.
How did you develop that formula for teaching? Because it's not always the formula. I've had other teachers who took that similar approach, and I think some people are studying like the most effective ways to teach, and I think that might be one of them. But how did you develop like, okay, this is how I'm going to approach teaching a classroom?
I don't know how to answer that. I'll tell you, it sort of feels like when you're in the room having a conversation with people, it's very organic.
Yeah.
You could have a conversation that's personal. You could have a conversation that's emotional. You could do that, and then it doesn't feel like you're faking it. You get me? You're not faking the conversation. Sometimes I think where teachers struggle to do that is they're afraid to test the boundaries, right? Because the boundaries, there were boundaries that we crossed. And,
for sure.
You know what I mean?
You had to pipe it down. You're like, all right, maybe we shouldn't go this far.
And I didn't want to necessarily lose my job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nor make the paper or something like that for a debate we had in class. And even if I didn't agree with it, I always tried to show the opposite perspective. I tried to make sure that sometimes the worst scenarios were where there's like one kid in the class that disagrees with every other person. Yeah. And you don't want to diminish their opinion. You know, even if I disagree with them too, I didn't want to make them feel like they didn't matter in that conversation.
Right.
You know, and sometimes those were tough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like everybody's ganging up on them. They're outgunned, they're outnumbered, and then all of a sudden I'm like trying to rein it back in so that this kid doesn't have a nervous breakdown that, you know, the teacher in the class is ganging up, you know. But those types of conversations, you know, for every one of those really great conversations, there were also some conversations that like were pulling teeth. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it's hard sometimes to get high school kids to express their feelings at all. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, like for the reasons that we talked about before, like people have got different things going on in their lives.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
You know, and they're not necessarily worried about my conversation in that class. And that's maybe a segue for any type of teaching and education is like teachers sometimes forget that these are people. Yeah. These are kids and not obviously they're people, but like that they've got things outside of this classroom.
Yeah. As the teachers do as well.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got stressors in life that are so they're powerful. You know what I mean? And you don't necessarily you can't be on your A game every day.
No way.
You know what I mean? And you can't necessarily have the best conversation every day. And sometimes they were terrible. The conversations we had. Like I admit that. You know, and they went nowhere and we spun our wheels and it was desperate and I looked like a fool sometimes. You know what I mean? But the good ones made up for it. And I'm like so happy that you got that much out of it.
Oh, for sure. And I wasn't the only one. I know when I talked to people in that class, they had the same experience as me. You know, Michael Horvath, Amir Garrett, I know all those people had that same experience.
That's great, man.
But I remember you said you wanted to go back to what Kevin said, like, because I can relate to Kevin. I wasn't like a student. Like, you look at Lydia. Lydia's like the perfect archetypal student.
Yep.
You know, she shows up on time. She's eager to get her work done. She comes back to class. She wants to know. I wasn't that guy at all. I remember coming back to your class because I was genuinely interested, and that was one of the only classes. You, Mr. Moles, and Cardone were some of the only teachers where what we talked about in that class genuinely like raised some light bulbs in my head. Yeah. But some classes, dude, I didn't want to be there at all. Yeah. I had to. I was either fighting to not fall asleep, or I was copying, you know, other people's homework. Yeah. You know, wasn't showing up for class. So what is your take on that? Like, what is your take on I know you said you wanted to go back to that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I'm struggling with in this new position here, and these are younger kids. Yeah. So they're junior high kids, middle school, I guess we call it 6th, 7th, and 8th, is trying to convince them that they're literally living through some of the most important years of their life. Yeah. Yeah. And like by the time you get to 8th grade, you're sort of setting your life up for one direction or another. Yeah. And I know people don't like it when I say that. I know I could listen, people have told me like, you know, you shouldn't freak them out, scare them that you're, but it's true, right? Like if you take the path in 8th grade into 9th grade in one academic track, you're sort of setting yourself up, right? For the future, for your whole life. And it's not a do or die situation. It's not like you guys, you could go do things still. You know what I mean?
for
It's
sure.
not like your life's over or something like that.
Not at all.
But I mean, it sounds to me, and I never had you. I wish I did.
Yeah.
I really wish I had you. But one of the things that it sounds like to me is that you now know how important it is, and you didn't know it then.
Absolutely. A lot of things about high school I didn't realize were as important as they would be in my life now. But I think like high school, oddly enough, for me, mapped out my character more than it mapped out like my love for like academics or anything like that. Like it really helped me as a person.
Yeah.
Which is why I really liked high school.
And it should have.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing. It's like, you know, we talked earlier about the exchange student, Alex, right?
Yeah.
Berlin.
Shout out Berlin.
Shout out.
Yes, sir.
You know, education in Germany is different.
Yeah.
And I'm so fond of Germany. I think Germany's a great country.
Really?
But it's the thing about Germany is it's all business, man. It's all business.
Really?
Like you go to school and school is school. It's not about friends.
Yeah.
It's not about sports.
They're very disciplined over
Yeah.
in Germany.
Very disciplined.
Yeah.
Very disciplined. And like he would always talk about how the weirdest thing about high school in America for him was how it was all sort of self-contained, right? Your whole life revolved around being in one location. For him, when he played football, that wasn't a school thing. He would go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like play in like the club team or
I
whatever.
went to one of his games.
Did
the
ya?
day before I left, we had to get on a bus and drive like a couple miles,
That's
or
cool.
you call it kilometers over
Right,
there,
right.
to get to where they played. And
Right.
They practiced. It was way far from his house, and it had nothing to do with his schooling or anything.
Right.
And it was interesting because these kids are from all over the city. They're
Yep.
from
Yeah.
North Berlin, East Berlin.
Yeah.
So
They don't have very many football programs down there, like where he's from, I'd imagine.
it's not like it is here.
Yeah, it's
clubs.
not like every school has a team.
No.
It's
Yeah.
like very
No
different.
school has a team.
Yeah.
Right, and it's all business. That's what I'm getting at,
Yeah.
right? It's all business. And I don't think that they really are too concerned about building the emotions or character of kids in those countries, you know? That's like up to the family, and it should still be here too, of course.
Yeah.
But it's like this, where in our culture, high school is a place where you sort of find yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whoever
Absolutely.
you are. And I think that's something that we did fairly well at Myers.
Yeah.
Not everybody bought in,
For sure.
you know?
Yeah.
I was only at the high school for 1 year. It was too new to get a good feel for it
Yeah.
because of all the people coming from different backgrounds and stuff.
Yeah.
But just even in the United States, it's like high school is supposed to be like an era for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
I think high school does a really good job at like showing you what it means to be social and how you
Yes.
are in like social groups and like where you click to.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
In like a team setting too, like
Yeah.
how you work with other people.
That's a large
and,
portion of what high school is.
Yeah, and like
Sure.
different characters as well.
Yeah.
I thought I was genuinely doomed until my senior year, though. Like back to your point you were saying before, how you think most kids start like mapping out their future in like 8th grade. I couldn't even tell you right now what my life looked like in 8th grade, but I do know.
You're young, man.
Yeah, I
know?
can't remember most of it, but I think for me, like everything in my life really started to click at right around the time where my senior year got cut. So like my entire high school, like who I was in high school, I feel like I'm almost nothing of that kind of, or you know what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
I'm nowhere near that person anymore that I was then. I'm way different now, and I think I'm way better now. And it took until like the very end of my senior year to realize that and
Yeah.
to start making a change.
Right. And on that point, you know, when I'd have some conversations with students, I got to tell you, man, one of the hardest conversations that I used to have with students, mostly seniors, I never really did this with anybody but seniors. I would ask them what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then I would ask them what else they wanted to do if that didn't work. And the amount of fiction that comes out of their mouths
Yeah.
is insane.
Yeah.
Right?
Interesting.
Like I'm going to be in the NFL.
Yeah, that was me.
Well,
Same here.
Well, you guys at least were doing something to try.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I had a student 1 year, and I don't say this to make fun of him. I feel bad for him, right? Like he was like, I'm going to be in the NBA. I'm like, you're not even on the team. There's no path for you. You know? And even if you do get on the team, you're not tall enough. And I know that's like, oh man, like why are you crushing his dreams? It's like, well, everybody's good.
Yeah.
Everybody's good in the NBA, right? So it's like, so taking that to an academic standpoint, when someone's like, I'm going to be a surgeon. Well, you're a senior and you haven't had a good high level science or math class in 2 years.
Yeah.
How are you going to do that? You get what I'm saying?
Yes,
like, how
absolutely.
are you going to be a surgeon? And it's not that you can't ever be a surgeon, but you got to almost start over again.
Yeah.
From scratch. The ship sailed here at high school.
Yeah. It's a tough place to be because like those years are years we're so confused and we're trying to figure out so much.
Yeah.
Right.
Like we're just, coming into our bodies and, you know, we're starting to like the opposite sex, and we got all these different subjects that we might not care about, we might really care about. We're gaining friends, losing friends, stuff going on at home. Like, it's hard for a lot of people to try to map, like, what do I want to do logically? You know, what am I interested in? You know, because I think
it's hard, man.
That's a question that has to be beyond what's going to make me the best money or what's going to make my family the happiest. It's like, what are you really interested in? What do you really connect with? Where do you feel that you can offer value to your community? And, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like, one of the examples I used to say was, okay, so you're not in the NFL. Let's say instead you become a coach of a D3 football team. What's wrong with that? And so many students would look at me like I was insane. And they would look at me like, what? I'm better than that. I'm so much better than a D. Like, what's wrong with being a D3 football coach? You know what I'm saying?
There's
like,
a lot of ego that brews up within a young 17, 18-year-old kid.
That's so insane to say that.
So you talk about that book, The Fourth Turning, right? What generation does what are we, Gen Z?
That's
I don't even know
people say.
Are we Gen
really
Z?
know.
Yeah, I think you guys are Gen Z.
Like 2000, 2001?
Yeah.
Like, where does that fall on the cycle of how generations repeat? Like, what are the archetypal figures that come out of that generation?
Is that even measurable yet?
So no, that's what this guy tries to explain. This guy in this book, The Fourth Turning, he tries to, like, I mean, you might be able to explain.
Yeah, so the book, The Fourth Turning, and this has been politicized. I try to avoid the political side of this. The book is basically about how history repeats itself in 20-year time periods.
Okay.
And this is one of, like, the 6 or 7 books the last 10 years that I've spent some time talking every year, or at least the last several years about. And the thing about it is, it's not perfect, right? Like, you can't look at this book and say this is like the perfect blueprint for life. There's more to life than this blueprint. But it talks about how it's like almost like a forest fire. Like, society, it grows and it's healthy, and then it kind of burns itself down. And then it kind of regrows. You know? And it's like, there's 20-year time periods, the seculum, and so you guys would be the artists.
That's the creatives, and you see influencers.
Look where we're at right here, right now, man.
That's exactly what we said.
We're making art right now.
We were talking about this right prior to coming here because we were trying to come up with that conclusion for ourselves. Like, what was the number one type of character to come out of, like, kids our age and our generation? And funnily enough, he's right. I think it's the creativity. It's like people utilizing the newfound internet and technology that we have before us and being able to find ways to use those better than everybody else around it.
Absolutely. I mean, this is so symbolic. We're here doing, this is art. This is total art.
What are the other archetypes throughout those 20-year periods? There's one that has to do with war, right? It's like,
so, there's the heroes. The heroes in the last 100 years, the heroes would have been the silent generation. So they're also tend to be called the greatest generation. Those are like the guys that stormed the beaches of Normandy.
Like you know what I mean? Generals, the Grants and stuff like that.
Yeah, but the previous one for that. Right. So, like, think of like, 1940s World War II teenagers. And then the next, their kids would be the baby boomers, and those were sort of the artists, right? And then the next generation would be Gen X, which would be where were they? They were like the inventors.
Oh, like the innovators.
The
innovators. Innovate society and stuff like that. Very interesting.
Right. And then it kind of keeps recycling. And like the millennials are like the heroes, kind of, again, like, and millennials, the funniest thing is that when I had these conversations in class with students, I always talk about how millennials get this rap of being, everybody thinks everyone young is a millennial. You know what I mean? They think you're a millennial. They think kids being born. Like, no, millennials are, that's over. You know what I mean? They're not being born anymore. It's Gen Z, and then it's like Alpha or whatever my daughter's age would be. And the thing about millennials is, like, I fall almost into millennial. I mean, I debate where I'm at. I'm on, like, a cusp, So
it's between millennial and
Gen X.
Gen X.
Yeah. So, like, there's a debate over whether it's like 1980 or 83 or 85. There's debates over this, when you were born, because when you're born really matters. For this discussion.
Who comes up with these, like, terminology for generations?
It's sort of, I mean, first of all, we're only talking about American generations.
Yeah.
So it's important to remember that. We're not talking
this doesn't work for anything else worldwide.
Once you leave the United States, they've got their own sort of generations. They have their own histories, right?
Like,
so this is our history we're talking about. Who comes up with this? I guess pop culture, the media, someone dubs these terms, right? But there's no perfect start and end time.
Yeah.
You know? And like one of the things that I always really enjoyed talking about when we had these conversations in class is how I felt sort of lucky to see 2 generations. So I definitely lived childhood in Gen X. Like, you know, TV was Gen X, you know. I was around for this thing called Napster. Do you guys know what that is?
No.
See, that's perfect, man. That's so funny. You guys have no idea.
Enlighten us.
Napster was the very first file sharing program.
Really?
For music.
Oh,
wow.
okay.
You know what I mean? So like that was when everybody bought CDs.
Yeah.
And then Napster was developed, and then you could share music. And it was our way of like beating the system, where now you could have music of artists, and it was illegal. You were breaking the law.
Yeah.
You know? But you'd get on your computer, you go to Napster, and with perfect strangers, you'd share music back and forth.
That's dope.
And that was, they had no playbook for that because it was, you know what I mean? So like I grew up, most of the music that I grew up listening to was like music that wasn't necessarily stuff that was given to me on the radio.
Yeah.
Right.
Kind of like you guys.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? Like you guys, but we were like the start of that. So like Gen X, you got your music from the radio.
Yeah.
You know, like whatever was popular that some program director said, this is a good song. Yeah. This is what you're going to like. It was like force fed to you. And this was our sort of beginnings. And then also a few years after that would be Facebook. And
wait. So you're kind of pre-internet then.
So I'm
like
definitely
you're right before the internet, right?
I grew up in high school with a computer on a desk, like in my bedroom, that I had to go onto that, and that was my only connection to the internet.
And what were you guys doing on that? Like, was it
so there was different things. They had like it was called America Online.
Online.
So yeah, it was like this thing, and we had dial-up internet. So, so you literally go online. See, this is funny because like this is what I mean that you guys don't know this.
Yeah.
This is proof that you're that generation.
Yeah.
And you go on, and you'd have to dial the phone number. It would do it for you. You'd click sign on, and it would send a signal through a modem, and then
it would make a crazy noise like
correct, like a fax machine or whatever it was. And then you get online, and then like sometimes, but then it got really popular. So like everybody tried to get on at like the peak hours, and then it would be a busy signal. And you like couldn't get on to talk to your friends or like send an email or something.
That's like AOL stuff, right? Like at that time.
That is America Online is AOL.
Oh, okay.
Really?
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I know.
That's originally what we called it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then Facebook comes around, and Facebook's like the first true social networking site, and that was just for college students.
Yeah, it started at Harvard, right? It originated at Harvard.
And it was like you had to be a college kid to get on that.
Yeah.
So if you weren't, it was cool then because of that. So you needed like a .edu, and it had to be of a school that Facebook accepted.
Yeah.
So like when Wilkes got it, it was like, oh, cool, now we can get on it.
How long after Facebook was created did like it reach Pennsylvania or like even say like Wilkes?
I can't say exact. I feel like 6 months, a year.
Yeah, because
you know what I mean?
The start of the Facebook dynasty was a crazy internet oddity that I don't think we'll ever get another thing like that.
Right.
We might.
I mean, it was. In what regard, though? What do you mean?
Like Facebook.
It revolutionized like the social network.
Yeah.
Like everything you see today, like Instagram, Snapchat, even I would say like things like YouTube or like a lot of different platforms that we use religiously today all started. Well, there was things before Facebook, but Facebook was the original tyrant or like
it was the one that got the ball rolling.
Yes.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there was a thing called MySpace too.
Yeah.
Which was sort of hilarious.
Right.
This thing, and this is what people did, right?
Yeah.
But it forced us in my generation to like be in public with people.
Yeah.
We didn't have the ability to not go out and have friends.
Yeah.
You know, like the video games of my era were on your own console, and you didn't connect to the internet.
Yeah.
And play people with headsets.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like you were forced to be a kid in the traditional sense, where you had like you just the amount of kids that went out for sports back then was so much higher because that's how we made friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's how we like did things.
Yeah.
That was our life to do that stuff. And like we would go and walk the neighborhoods and hang out on people's porches.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to make this sound like the 1950s or something like that. You know what I mean?
I get it though. It makes sense.
That's what we did.
That
like,
wasn't very long ago. That time of life was not that long ago, which I think is crazy.
And like look at a football game, for instance. I know you guys are both football players, which I want to come back to that too also.
Sure.
But like the games were packed.
Yeah.
because they had to be passed.
Yeah. That was what we were doing, right? That was what
That
to
was
do.
it.
Yeah.
You waited all week for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you waited all week with your friends to go out and hang out and then you go to like Burger King or whatever it is you did after. That was childhood.
Do you think that with the revelation of technology and the ability to connect with somebody from miles and miles from across the world, do you think that's a net negative thing or a net positive thing?
I debate this every day.
Really?
What do you think?
I debate it every day. I think, like, so when we used to have to do research papers in school and stuff, it was absurd the amount of time and effort it took to cite sources, to get a book, to find the physical paper book, right? Like we used to have like this database system at Wilkes called Erik, right? Where you had to go and like get this stuff sent to you. Like they'd mail you books and you had to read the whole book. There was no searching online and stuff. And the amount of information, the amount of time it took us to get information was so slow. And today I stay up at night and I have like a weird question that pops into my mind and I just type it in.
Right, like that,
You know what I mean? Like, you know, I joked with one of my friends. I was like, you know, when was the War of the Roses, right? Well, like I'd have to go get like an encyclopedia or something like that, flip through the book. It took me like 20 minutes.
Maybe longer.
It
would take me an
Probably,
hour.
yeah.
Right,
It might take
right.
me a
Dead
day
serious.
to a week.
And now you just go to Google, right? So like, so that sort of stuff is awesome.
Yeah.
That you could just do that. Same thing with like, you know, traveling, for instance.
Yeah.
You could meet up with people and
Right.
stay at their places. Like, hey, could I crash on your couch? Right.
Did you use maps when you traveled to countries?
Sometimes.
Like a map, like a paper, like this
I
is
used
west.
a lot of paper maps in the United States because like
Really?
we had good maps. Like the United States has great maps, right? So like there's a lot of like well-documented roads and everything. So yeah, we used to use maps and atlases all the time.
Really?
All the time.
That's
man.
interesting.
And I'll tell you right now, the one thing that was different about that, you knew how to get there. So if I had to go from here to say, you know, Newbury Street in Boston,
Yeah.
right? I could think through every single turn.
That's what I want to talk about.
Me and him joke about that.
That's what I
all the
want to
time.
talk about because my question is, does this immediate access to information dull our intelligence in a way? You talk to like somebody of like our grandparents' age, right? And they'll tell you, they'll give you directions. Take a left on Mulberry, and then you'll see 2 stop signs, and then over you'll see a right, and then make a straight, and then like. How am I going to store all this information? I'm just going to plug the address into my phone. It's going to take me there.
Yeah.
So my question is, and like, if I have a question, I can use my own, possibly I can use my own human intelligence to try to figure out the answer. Now, it's just right there for me. So you know what I'm trying to say?
And probably with GPS, going to take you down a road that the car doesn't fit. You know what I'm saying? Or puts you into a place where you're like, this is not a good idea, right? This is, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that. But like more than once I've typed in Waze or something and it's taking me the shortest route by like a second to a parking lot. It's like, what am I doing here? This is crazy. Yeah, no, you're onto something. You're onto something, right? Like, so it's the idea that you're not really, it's just, you don't need to think. So you're not thinking.
Right.
You don't need to.
Do you think that can possibly free up the mind for other things that are more important to you that you might want to focus more of your just brain power on? Like, could that be a possible outcome of that as well?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think about that, like this new job that I'm in here now, I think about the life that previous administrators used to have to encounter.
Yeah.
And the types of things we have now, like Skyward, which I know you guys are familiar with.
Yeah.
Skyward is so insanely efficient.
Yeah.
The idea of being able to go on and have a database of all student activity is unbelievable. And I remember my first year teaching, I needed a plan book, not a plan book per se with like lessons, but like a plan book with assignments and grades and numbers and
I remember
letters.
that.
You remember all that stuff?
When I was like young in elementary school, how the teachers would like grade your stuff on the paper.
I remember we first got Skyward.
I do too,
I
because
remember
it was pretty much, that was definitely before I ever went to Myers. That Skyward was a thing.
We were in
and I know
Kistler.
the elementary schools, I think, were a little bit later to the game because they could be as like one teacher and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that we save so much time with Skyward. It does all the math for you.
Yeah.
If you're a teacher and you put the grade in, this counts for 20%, that counts for 30%. Boom, boom, boom. Here's your score. Here's the kid's score, and the kid could see it. They don't even have to come and ask you for it, right? That is unbelievable that exists. So it frees up all this extra time to do other things. But what I will say is that now I think we find so many other things to do instead.
Yeah.
We're like overloading ourselves. And I don't just mean in like an education job.
Yeah.
In almost any job, right? Like I always use the example of UPS.
Okay.
And there's this phrase, you get UPS'd, okay? UPS is so insanely efficient. I don't know if you guys know this, but they do little things where they try not to make left turns with the trucks whenever possible to save minutes, right? Seconds add up to minutes, add up to hours, that sort of thing. And they get the most bang for their buck.
Yeah.
And what it does is it forces the drivers to be so absurdly efficient, but it also gives the company the ability for this is their purpose, to hire the least amount of people and give those drivers the most amount of packages.
Yeah.
Right? So those drivers get insanely stressed out. I mean, that's a really hard job.
I believe.
You know what I mean? To be a UPS driver, a really hard job. And some of them, they crack. You know what I mean? Like any job, they get so stressed out where they keep giving them more and more packages to where they can't keep up with the pace. Does that make sense to you guys, right?
Yeah.
So like you could apply that to almost any profession where it's like, okay, now we've freed up our minds.
I see. You're over. Okay, I see what you're saying.
We've freed up our minds because of this technology.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is we're supplementing even more work
Right.
that we normally would never have had.
Right.
Yeah.
There would have been more people doing it. So it's efficiency, but it's also mental overload.
Comes with a cost.
So
Right.
back to the ability to communicate. Do you think it's a net negative thing or a net positive thing? Do you think it, like, so I can text you right now and you're in a completely different place. Do you think that takes away from our ability to socialize, or do you think it's a positive thing because it gives people new outlets to create friends in different ways and more creative ways?
I mean, it's like a 50-50 thing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know any other way to explain it. I think that what you just said makes complete sense, but also at the same time, you know, like again, the COVID thing, for instance, that time period, it also gives us an excuse to not be social.
Yeah.
And you get what I'm saying? Like there's excuses. And those, getting back to the football games, like where are all the people on Friday nights at the football games? Doing something else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're not at those football games cheering on their community. And the ripple effect, right? The ripple effect of not having the community out at a football game.
Yeah.
Most of the people didn't go to the football game to watch football.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
Like
a social event.
it's a social event.
Yeah.
Right? And then you would go to these events, you'd see your friends, you see people, you'd go, you'd impact the local economy by going to maybe Jerry's Pizza or you know what I mean?
True, very true, very true.
You know, all that sort of stuff. And those little things made the community.
Yeah.
I was going to bring this up before when you said that. I think that there's like a entertainment overload with people now where you can just find instant like stimulation or entertainment really in anything. You just open your phone and play a game, or you could go on your computer, play a game. It takes away from a lot of those like in-person personal situations.
Yeah.
That's why you don't see a lot of people going to the games anymore, because
Right.
rather than going to the game, I could just watch it on the TV,
Yep.
or I could open TikTok and scroll on TikTok.
Right.
There's so many different things that you could do to stimulate your mind nowadays, rather than just going out to the football game on Friday night.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, and I mean, I don't know what to make of that, right? But I do know that that makes it more complicated to educate people.
Yeah.
Right. That makes it harder for teachers because you've got Google Classroom now, right? That's like what our school district primarily uses to put assignments out.
Yeah.
And that is super efficient. But it's also, the downside of that is now you've got Google Classroom, where you don't necessarily have to get in front of the class maybe and do some sort of presentation that's uncomfortable or whatever. I'm just giving a random example here, but you take away a little bit of that in-person sort of direct connection.
Yeah.
You know? So again, it goes back to the UPS analogy. It's like Google Classroom has made us insanely more efficient.
Yeah.
But it's also sort of taken away some of the organic human chemistry that
I wonder from like a biology perspective, I wonder if we're going to evolve in a way that is designed to interface with technology.
with like AI stuff or something?
Yeah, maybe. Like I heard somebody explain it one way and I thought it was interesting. Like we're already partially symbiotic in having these computers in our pockets at all times. You know, like these computers, if somebody went through this, they can tell you exactly who I am. Probably.
It's a pretty deep thing.
Yeah.
It really
So
is.
It's very
My question is,
interconnected.
How old is your daughter?
4.
My brother's 6 years old. He has a nephew who's 5.
Mhm.
And my brother can work a tablet better than I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Already?
like, and he can pick up a remote and immediately know how to navigate the buttons and how to navigate the devices that are newly presented to him. So I wonder, what is life going to be like for that generation?
Yeah.
I think about that often.
You know, like what's it going to be like? What's the social life and what are social events going to be like for your daughter, my brother, and your nephew?
Right now, it's already rough. Like my brother's 13, and most of his interactions are done through some type of technology.
Do you have that water behind you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to answer that one either, right? Like that, I guess we can't really predict the future entirely here, but then I see like on the way here today, I had to turn and I went past King's and I saw the sign for Esports.
Yeah.
Right. I have no idea what that is. I know what esports are.
Yeah.
But I don't know on the King's campus.
Yeah.
What that is.
Yeah. It's sports for video games.
Yeah.
So what's that building? What's in there?
Guess Kev. What is the building?
Yeah, like what's in the building?
Yeah.
I know what esports are.
I know the guy who designed that building. His name is Ray Pryor.
Oh yeah.
And
sure.
He's responsible for like the tech center at King's, I think. I believe from last time I was there. And so you go in there and there's desks like this that are like a room long and there's consoles and computers and televisions where people practice. Like I would practice on a football field.
Yeah.
Drills and stuff like that. They practice on some of these very highly competitive video games. And then they play other schools. Like
right.
King's plays Division I schools, but in esports.
See, now that's what we're talking about. I have no idea what this means.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that kind of gets back to the generational thing too, which is like maybe I'm not supposed to know what this means. Maybe that's what the next generation is supposed to know. It's
a newfound form of competition. But I will say, like, when we were in school, that was very looked down upon, like just the idea of playing video games in general. And I am a big gamer. I like playing video games a lot. He likes playing video games a lot. And I do really like where it has came. I will say that. Because I definitely think there's a lot of benefit to it. Yeah. If I had never played video games to the caliber that I did when I was younger, I probably wouldn't be doing a lot of this stuff either. Right. It definitely kickstarted it.
It translated very well, too.
Same thing with the entertainment and stuff as well. Yeah, like watching videos online.
Right.
If it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't do this at all.
Yep. I mean, I get it. I guess, it comes back to the generational thing.
Yeah.
You know?
There's an esports program at Wilkes-Barre area.
Is there now?
Yeah. That's what Xavier was telling us about.
Oddly enough, off topic, I also heard that they implemented a dance class / program here.
A GAR?
Or they have some kind of dance room or dance class. I don't know. That's just how it was portrayed to me the last time I was here.
Maybe I should know that, but I don't. I have no idea about that.
Maybe I'm lying. Maybe they were saying that they used to have it and they don't do it anymore. That I don't remember. But it was something dance related. I thought that was pretty interesting too. But the high school does do a lot of different things. Like I don't know if you knew, but the high school has a podcast now. Like they do something. I believe it's called Wolfpack Live or something like that. I don't know if they post any of them or if it's like within the school, but that's cool. Like I love the fact that schools are starting to pick up the idea that is a reality, and for our generation more than anybody. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I guess that's the biggest advantage of the new school is that when you put everybody together in one place and you have the opportunity, say for a podcast, maybe you'd only have 7 kids in the whole school district really interested in that. Yeah. If it was one of the old 3 high schools, they couldn't have had that club. Yeah. Because in one school that would be 1 kid. Yeah. And it wouldn't have been efficient. You know what I mean? To have those types of things. But I mean, I actually just want to go back really quick to football. Can we do that? Yeah, please, absolutely.
So I didn't play football. But what I did do was for 2 of the last coaches, I filmed the games.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when I filmed the games, although I didn't do your last season, I was shot by then.
Like the 2019 Meyer season?
Yes,
or the
last Meyer season. Okay. I did not do that season.
Were you in the loop though? Like, did you know what was happening, like with the players in the games and stuff?
Not really. That was part of the problem. I came and saw you guys a few times.
Cool.
That's nice.
Yeah, I saw you a few times. But that's why I did it. Right, was to like get as a teacher to see football players who I didn't necessarily relate really well with because I was not a football guy myself, to go and see them at least once a week in the locker room in their habitat. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's like a really passionate place to be on game day. Yep. You know what I mean? And that's hard to you can't replicate that on esports. You can't replicate that vibe.
It is different.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that type of emotion, that like warrior aspect of being in there.
Yeah.
And I was out of my element, and I liked being out of my element.
Yeah.
Right? It put me in your element. Yeah. Which is like, people have never been in a football locker room before a game don't understand. Yeah. Do you get
That's definitely a big disconnect with like esports. I get where you're going with that. Like there's something different about physical competition using like your vessel. Like when you're using everything you have, not just mental intelligence, but like your physical ability as well. I think it's a completely different thing.
Yeah, but that might be strict for football though, because I think you go into like a basketball locker room and the dynamic is not the same.
It is a little different, I would imagine. Football has like a strange sort of
aura. There's like
there's something different about it. There really is.
Yeah.
And because it's like you really have to be a team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you can't, there's no other way around it.
And
You know
it's
what I mean?
dangerous. Like whenever you're
Yeah.
doing something that's dangerous,
Yep.
it kind of like there's more of an emotional content to it as well.
Yeah.
That's
you
true.
know? Like,
And there was a lot of people watching too.
You're risking something when you go on that field.
Oh,
And so
100%.
That
I mean, it's like war,
yeah,
you know?
that
It's
aspect of
crazy.
it
It's a good way to look at it.
like
Yeah.
really brings raw emotion and oddly enough, like love. I became very like emotional in a loving way when I played football.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Because you were experiencing something so passionately and you cared about it so much. And then that also brings me back to like the physical aspect of it. Like you're using everything you have to achieve a goal.
Mhm.
Yeah. I have an odd take on that though. I feel like we don't have to get too deep into this, but I feel like I should just say it because it's on my head. But I feel like a lot of what sports are is sort of a representation of war. And I feel like that's a reason why men are so attracted to sports.
I believe that was why organized professional football started to begin with, because I believe football was invented like right after some war. I don't necessarily remember what war, but it was a way for us to still be able to like revolve ourselves in like a team kind of like aura, if that kind of makes sense. I'm definitely, I'm definitely not hitting it on the head, but it was a way for us to still compete against an opposing force.
Yeah.
And it was like something we all understood at that
Yeah.
time. And it was just something that got a lot of people fired up.
Yeah, it makes you think that we're so attracted to that still.
Yeah.
Very much
You
so.
know?
It's interesting.
It's like that's not a good sign for future wars, right?
Yeah.
That's
And
the case.
and it raises a real tribalistic attitude as well.
Yes.
And that's all sports though. Like you can even go to Europe. I remember I went to Europe during the World Cup, and it really brings out like this is my color and that's yours and we're enemies because of this. You know?
Yeah.
It really raises that like that natural tribal element of being human.
Yeah.
You know?
So, but like you guys learned that by doing it,
yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
you played it. Other people that didn't do it, that wasn't their high school experience.
Yeah.
So, but you got something out of that, right? So you didn't like some of your teachers in your classes that you're in, and you were sleeping in them, or you didn't, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you got something supplemented. I would imagine you did too.
Yes, absolutely.
Supplemented from that sports team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was
sure.
a different set of skills that you
Yeah.
picked up. Not just social skills, but like the teamwork aspect, all those sorts of things.
Yes.
Growing, dealing with people you disagree with.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that stuff matters too.
It does. Yeah. You have to learn like one thing football really taught me was you have to learn to be physically disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
Like showing up on time and being punctual and also like going through workouts and like having to like days where you're hitting.
Mm-hmm.
Like those were necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And those were necessary to perform at your best. And if that's truly what you want, like if that was the output that you truly desired, then the input was necessary. Like that disciplinary input was necessary. So that goes the same with life. Like I think that's very applicable to any endeavor in life. Like if this is the output that you want, you must take the uncomfortable measures to make that thing happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, again, we're sort of hitting the same themes here, but you know, that comes back to like we're in GAR right now, right?
Yes.
But the GAR and Myers thing, right?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
you know what I
Very
mean?
much.
And it also it again, it's like back to the politics thing. You know, like red and blue, or there's so many different things that we're saying here today. That's really fun, by the way.
I'm
having a great time, man. I'm having a great time. But there's so many things that we could kind of keep doing. This feels like a social science seminar classroom.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in it. This is like flashbacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Right
that's
now,
awesome.
we don't have as many people, obviously, but it's flashbacks. But you know, education though, right? It should be something that like moves society forward. And you guys use the word discipline, and I'll add the word routine. Those things keep society going.
I agree.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
agree.
Like, and as a teacher, I think for me, the two things that I didn't say this out loud a lot, but I thought about it. The two things that I always sort of thought were important were empathy, right? And discipline. And the discipline part wasn't necessarily the context of like, you're getting in trouble, you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
It was staying on task. Like, I never really liked to waste time. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
You know, like we usually worked bell to bell.
Yeah.
It was the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't sit around a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously like a half day or something. There's a few minutes here and there. But like I thought it was important for people to have like to know that that's going to be the routine today.
Yeah.
To come in and you know, that's like education. They have these things, these catchphrases like bell ringers and all these things. Like you guys I'm sure know what they are,
Yep.
right? Like you come in, you do all these things, get a routine. You learn those things too and you're set for life.
Yeah.
You know, like in your case, both of you guys, I know you go to the gym a lot.
Yeah.
Like you go on a routine.
Yeah.
You're disciplined to have the routine. Again, that's the stuff that I think we don't say out loud a whole lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's equally as important as like learning math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah, I agree. I really think, and Lydia and I have these conversations all the time. Lydia and I learn a lot from Lydia. Like oftentimes we get into like verbal sparring matches about a lot of these concepts, but it's very beneficial for the two of us. But what she really opened my eyes to was education is liberation. Like in order to be free, in order to grow, you must educate yourself or you must seek education. And I think like I want to say this because education doesn't stop after traditional schooling. Like we're always really learning.
Yes.
That's what got me so big into books is like there's things that we're curious about and there are resources to fulfill that curiosity, you know? So you see areas that are socioeconomically on the poorer end and you see people who are of a higher status or of a higher economic status. And I think the differences in these economic brackets per se is the education of these people and like the value. But I believe values and foundation is also within the same realm of education. But I really think like the basic fundamental principles, education could free a person from
pretty much any
situation,
problem or situation you're going through in your
because
life.
if you knew better, you'd do better.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, society's a system, right?
Yeah,
All
yeah.
societies are just systems. It's like a fancy way of phrasing it.
Sure.
And if you know how to properly play the system, and that phrase is always used in a different context, playing the system or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like playing the game of the system.
To be able to navigate the
Correct.
system, right?
Correct. Knowing how to navigate. And, you know, a lot of times you could get really far in life just by being kind to people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, by not burning bridges and by creating networking relationships and you know, showing people that you can create bonds and then call upon those bonds when you need them or vice versa. Or return that.
That's education though. Like knowing that is something you're taught. I mean, you can have that a little bit naturally, like a charisma or a natural, like you're good at communicating, but I think a lot of that is learned. And there's like this one, and I'm not Jewish, but there's like this one Jewish saying that says, to not teach your children how to make money is teaching them how to steal. And I think that kind of like fits in that framework kind of well, because when people aren't like taught how to play the system or navigate this system, it's almost like they're starting with a poor hand. I don't know how we got here, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, I like it though,
but
man.
We're here.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I mean, but it's true, right? So like this place though is the investment.
Yeah.
Right? It's the investment in that. So if you learn how to do the things, even math, I was just kind of giving a bad rap to math a second ago. I used to tell this to the classes and in the senior classes and stuff of previous years. It's like, what is math? Like people say like, I don't need to learn math. You know, it's all you need to learn how to do is you have a calculator now or whatever, blah, blah, blah. No, man, it's logic, right? Like math is logic. And it took me forever to figure that out because I was so horrifically bad at math.
Yes.
Right.
You know what I mean? I never connected with math. It was embarrassing how bad I was at math. I was definitely pretty decent with understanding these social concepts.
Yes.
But when it came to math and even like science, I was in outer space. You know what I mean? I had no concept. And I think if I looked at it now, if I were able to go back in life to an earlier time in my life, and if I were able to be told, and if we're able to be like resonate with me that what you're learning isn't math, what you're learning is logic.
Yes.
Then maybe I'd care more. You know, I would have tried harder.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not, you're problem solving. You're not solving a problem. You're problem solving, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's very applicable to other areas of life.
Yep.
Like that level of logic is very applicable to a lot of areas of life.
Training the brain.
Yes.
How to do that.
Yeah. Do you think that, and I think this is like basic understanding, but do you think, or do you notice as a teacher or now as a head teacher that coming into life, certain people are almost magnetically drawn to different interests. Like you talked about Fauci a little bit, and I don't know if that was on the podcast or before the podcast, but you said that his brain was wired to understand diseases and science in that area.
He's clearly a math and science guy, right? He's not a politician.
But do you think, like, as we grow up, we're naturally inclined to go in the direction of one of these areas? Like, I have a science brain, or I have a math brain, or I'm intuitively more capable in terms of like writing and creativity and poetry and stuff like that. Like, do you think this is how we're set up from a human's perspective?
That's an interesting take on. I'd never heard it described that way before, but that makes a lot of sense to me.
What do you think?
It's probably a hybrid. It's probably a little bit of that, but also what your experience is in your environment.
Yeah. What you're exposed to.
Yeah, right. So like, for instance, if you really take a minute, and I used to do this for a decade. I did this. And a decade matters in this conversation. The book Outliers.
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell.
Right. It talks about 10,000 hours of practice. Some people love the book. Some people hate the book. I never really wanted to use that book as like a book for curriculum purposes.
Yeah.
But it was more or less a more intellectual way to discuss practice and the logic of what
the
practice.
Science behind practice.
Exactly.
Right.
And when those first 3 chapters of that book, they're almost all exclusively dedicated to really like people that are well known for something, and they didn't just get there because they have the brain.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Just like the basketball player doesn't just get there because they're good.
Sure.
There's a lot of good basketball players, right? Like, what was it in their story that got them there?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, what was it with this computer science person that made them Steve Jobs?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
What was it with the Beatles, which is in the book? Right. In class, I used to always talk about Matt McGloin, who's football. Again, we're going back to football.
He's from this area, right?
Yeah. So Matt McGloin played for Penn State, and then we also had Eugene Lewis, right, who plays Canadian football now. Eugene Lewis was recruited by Penn State as like their top recruit. And I don't know if he's a wide receiver or what, but he came from Valley West actually, and Myers finished Myers his senior year as like a big debacle when that whole thing went down. Played basketball and stuff. It was crazy. But the thing about it was, I remember thinking about Outliers when I was watching in real time the Matt McGloin saga, because Matt McGloin was a walk-on quarterback for Penn State. And walk-on quarterbacks at Penn State, it's like a rare thing, right? And it was so important to Matt McGloin's history, I believe. This is my belief. I'm not saying that someone else came up with this. It was so important to him that Joe Paterno have his downfall. And the whole, sex scandal happened with Jerry Sandusky. And then the new coach come in, which was Bill O'Brien, who was like the guy that was with Tom Brady. Yeah. It was so important to Matt McGloin for all of those things to happen exactly as that. You know what I mean? It took him from being like an okay quarterback to being like a much better quarterback. And then eventually get into like the NFL. Yeah. Probably if the opposite had happened, Eugene would be in the NFL. And maybe Matt McGloin would be in Canada.
Interesting.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And getting back to Eugene, then the new coach comes in, Franklin now, and like has no use for him because it's not his guy. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. And it was just a tragic story to see one arc go down and the other arc go up. So Matt McGloin's arc going up, Eugene's arc going down. And I mean, maybe football people are going to crush me on this and like watch this and say, you don't know what you're talking about. But to me, that was like a chapter of Outliers. Yeah.
It's an interesting take.
You know what I mean? Like where like all the practice, all the chances to get good practice came to one person and weren't given to the other.
Yeah, because the practice has to be diligent.
It has to be perfect.
It has to be in a way that like challenges the way that your brain experiences and interprets like the stimulation, I suppose, right?
Sure.
I love that idea, the 10,000 hour idea, because I've just recently heard of a concept called neuroplasticity, and it's the idea that the brain can rewire itself based on how it is stimulated. So if we're talking about a chess player, me and Kev were just talking about this yesterday. If we're talking about a chess player who's been sitting in front of a chessboard for 10,000 plus hours, and they've seen different patterns and configurations of moves and sequences of events and so on, their brain is now adapting to play chess. There's a book called Peak, where this is the exact story, like how people like Mozart have came to be, how people like Einstein have came to be. And there was specifically an instance with London cab drivers. And allegedly this test is very, very difficult to ace, and it's a legit profession to be a cab driver in London. Yep. But the test is very rigorous and it's difficult. And researchers have found that in studying for this test, a piece of the test is having to understand every street and location in the city of London, right?
You have to be an expert.
So they found that the people who were able to pass these tests, we talk about like the examples of outliers, the people who were able to pass these tests, they've seen an increase in a region of their brain called the hippocampus, which is responsible for understanding space. So similar to a muscle, I lift a dumbbell repetitively and my muscle grows. This continual stimulus caused a region in their brain to grow 2.5 times larger than the average person.
That's interesting.
How about that?
Yeah.
So you continually stimulate yourself with whatever it is. It can
really
be teaching.
Right.
It can be chess. It can be computers.
no doubt.
Whatever.
I think
Whatever's your thing.
Your
10
brain will
years,
adapt.
I was a significantly better teacher 10 years than I was my first year, right? And I mean, and the one thing I do want to say is I learned something over the years. I use this phrase privately with my friends all the time, which is like, you got to know what you don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know I don't know a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not trying to be humble or something like that, but it's like just remembering that you haven't experienced enough yet sometimes.
Yeah.
You don't really know what you don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And knowing there's a lot out there that you still need to figure out is like the first step to getting better at something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It drives the want to figure out how to
Right.
learn something or to, exactly what you're saying.
Right. But maybe by 10,000 hours or 10 years, you started to figure a lot of those questions out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So let me turn this back around on you guys.
Okay.
I watched these podcasts for a better part of the last year now. I didn't see them all, but I saw most of them.
Okay.
And there's like a quiet theme sometimes, and it's really subtle, where there's like a little bit of negativity on the system.
That's
like
true.
the corporate system.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Let's
There's like a
talk about
negativity. There's a negativity on it.
Yeah.
And there's also like, and I don't know if you guys actually say this, but there's even like a little negativity on the idea of like getting a job that you go to college for.
Yeah. No, I think you're onto something there.
And I think you guys would both be great teachers.
It's oddly enough what we both do.
A lot of people
currently.
tell me
Right.
that, like in school, because
Yeah.
I'm a teacher's aide. They
Right.
ask me, like, when are you becoming a teacher? Or do you plan on becoming a teacher? And I don't really.
Well,
Yeah.
because you guys, you're getting practice now. You're getting an inside view of what that job is like.
Yeah.
You see it now. You have I know for a fact, without even asking you the question, that you've learned more in the past month about education than you probably have learned in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
sure.
Like, because now in this new position you guys have, right?
Yeah.
So it's you're now more aware than honestly, and this is where I'm gonna agree with you. You're more aware about what the schools are like now than probably some of your professors would be if you went to school.
Yeah.
Do you follow me?
Yeah.
If you went to Wilkes or King's, you
Yeah.
probably know more about what this place is really like
Yeah.
than they do.
Mm-hmm.
This was a question I wanted to ask too, because one of the things that I've realized about the school that I work at is that I didn't have to go get a college degree to do what I do now, but I like work firsthand and basically do everything that you need to do to, let's say, just be a teacher in a school. So why, like, I'm asking you, why would it be necessary for me to like step outside of that, leave the classroom, go to college for 4 years to learn how to do exactly what I'm doing?
Yeah.
That's what I never understood about my position specifically.
Yeah. So that's a good point you're making. I'm not saying it's not valid. But I think when you go through the rigors and the annoyances of college, because like a lot of college is truly a waste. Like I'm not going to pretend like it's not, you know. I mean, there are teachers that I had in college that I thought, wow, they have no idea what this job is. You know what I mean? Like some of them never taught in a classroom before, and like I said, you guys know more about it than they do, right? But at the same time, you are learning things about like that. It's like that math class, the logic.
Yes.
You follow me?
Yeah.
Like you are learning things about the system as a whole. You're learning things about psychology of people that you're not going to learn just by being in a classroom. These are like you're reading about child psychology. You're learning about, you know, laws. And, you know, it's kind of the same. You could put in the same box as like, why do we have these PSSA/Keystone tests that everybody complains about and they aren't really valid? Well, you need something to show that you're doing something.
Yes, I agree.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes,
like there needs to
absolutely.
be some standard to say. And it doesn't mean you're going to be a good teacher if you go to college. It doesn't mean you're going to be good at this, right? But you can develop that background to it expands what you're aware of. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like it expands what you're aware of.
Yeah.
And that to me is what, like a lot of college degrees, they are sort of this formal, like, show.
Yeah.
You put on a show to some degree. And you guys could both do it. Right? Like
I know I could do it.
Yeah, I know.
for a
You
fact I
read
know I could.
more than most college students do now for fun.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I didn't go to college originally is because, and I guess at the time, like I never would have known if this would have been true or not, but I think I would have wasted that opportunity. Like my mind space and who I was leaving high school, I think my literal thought process on it is if I did go to college, I was probably going to just do what most people did, dig myself into debt, go to a bunch of parties, and not care about school the same way I didn't really care about school when I was there originally.
I understand.
And I didn't want to throw it all away just off the idea that that was what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, but now you're not there anymore.
No, I agree.
You know what I mean? You're not. That's not going to happen now.
Yeah.
I mean it. Like it's not going to happen now.
Yes.
And I think I used to use the analogy about LCC. There's two types of students that go to LCC. Students that don't know what they're doing and just feel like they need to continue with something. And students that go there and say, this is super cheap. I'm going to go and get my life started with this place.
That's what I did, and it was a bit of both for me. Now, granted, I dropped out of LCC, but that was the combination of those two things is exactly why I ended up going there.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to feel like I was like letting my family down by not going to college, because that's one of those things that's ingrained in your mind throughout life.
Very
is like
true.
You're going to, and that's where this whole corporate nightmares thing stemmed from, is that you were going to go to school, you were going to start a family, you were going to get a job, and that was it. And truthfully, that terrifies me more than anything.
I mean, the thing about being a teacher, though, this is like a sales pitch now, is you have a lot of free time.
As a college
yeah, because you get a lot of summers off.
It's a really stressful job.
Yeah.
When you're doing it, you're super stressed out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you're living during those months during the year, I'm super stressed out right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I go home and do work all night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's because it's new, so I'm slow at it. I need to get better at it.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing schoolwork in the traditional sense that I did. I'm preparing the next day's discipline and stuff like that. But like, I don't want to be bad at it.
Yeah.
So I go home and I do all this extra work. And it reminds me of like when I was starting out to be a teacher the first few years, how I'd have to like plan out my lessons the night before or whatever. It took time and it's stressful. But you know what else is also awesome? The summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like you guys know some of these teachers that have like side businesses and ice businesses, construction businesses, you guys have this entrepreneurial spirit where you want to do things that are not in the system of 9 to 5.
Yep.
This job sort of affords you some leeway to do that.
Yeah, I've experienced that like with my job now. I'm a full-time employee and I work the same hours as a teacher, and I still get to explore some of my entrepreneurial endeavors, and I've experienced that as a custodian here at Wilkes-Barre area as well. Probably shouldn't talk too much about that on the air right now.
Right.
But I think like, well, one, I will say I think Kevin is wise for having the self-awareness to know not to go immediately. I think, honestly, I must say I think a little bit of what college is kind of corrupt.
I agree.
I think that's.
Go ahead.
true.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, that's okay. And I like to talk about this like back and forth because I like to expand. But I think it's very interesting how at 17 years old, these ultimately huge businesses that are universities are willing to give you hundreds of thousands of dollars that you will one day have to repay in exchange for a job that's going to pay you that money to repay them.
It depends on the job, though.
The opportunity to get a job to repay them. That's my thoughts.
Right. I mean, it does depend on the job.
Yes.
Right. Like we're talking about teaching now. So teaching, you do rack up a lot of debt and you don't make nearly as much money as you'd like to make. Yeah. Although I do think it's a fair salary.
Are teachers underpaid or overpaid, or are they just?
I'm so scared to say this live.
You don't have to.
No, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I think we're pretty close to what's fair.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that the society that we live in can give us a whole lot more.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, index it for inflation, index it for like cost of living, of course, right? But like, I don't think that a public school teacher is worth, $160,000.
Sure.
You get what I'm saying? That seems outrageous because the society wouldn't, or especially our own community, couldn't afford that.
It would kind of make in my opinion, a bigger disconnect between the students and the teachers if the teachers were like some wild celebrity making like a fortune kind of figures too.
Right.
So I think that that's part of look at as well.
And I mean, I also think that you have to give people a living wage where there's hope.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like where you have the hope of like, I'm going to pay off my debt. I'm going to buy a home. So I do think this job affords that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I agree with you.
There's hope in this position.
Yeah.
I agree.
You know?
But I was saying with Kevin, I think he's wise enough too. Because I think in Europe, like it's more common to take what's called a gap year, right? Like to take a year off from high school, figure out who am I, what do I want to do, and then begin like forging your life in that way. But I feel like there's a good chance that I do go back to college, but instead of having a gap year, like I think it's more like a gap couple years in my instance, because I'm still trying to figure out like who am I and what I want to do. I know I'm kind of figuring out like the type of lifestyle that I want to live, and I think we should get into travel. But I really want to like go travel and see like a lot of the world, and live in a lot of different countries, and
it's great
because that is the exact education that is one day going to lead to the development of my character, and I think it's going to like allow me to be a more understanding person, and I'm just genuinely fascinated with different areas of the world. So I don't know if I have that freedom with a 9-to-5 job at the moment, or like a teaching job at the moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. I think, again, I will say that summer, though, is a big difference.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
Like my first year at Myers, that's when I went to Africa with my friend Mike, who was leaving one job and going to another job.
Yeah.
And so he had some time off in between, and that's when we went.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was a no-brainer. I was like, all right, graduation happened. We'll go, and I'll go as long as I need to go. I have until September to do it. Not a lot of people have that opportunity. And I'm talking specifically about travel now. You know, not a lot of people have that amount of free time.
Right.
They're sort of stuck on that, like, you know, corporate. I'll use your words here. That vacation time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're boxed in.
Yeah.
So that's like, again, that is an option with this profession, and I'm not trying to constantly sell you on it. I just think you guys would be good.
I appreciate it.
You know, like
that means a lot. But oddly enough, I think teaching and what we do here could be interconnected in a way, because one thing we have an opportunity to do is bring on dope people like you
with the podcast.
Or absolutely, who are very educated and have like these beliefs and opinions and ideas, and hundreds of people view them, and then they get to make their we're stirring up most people's brains when they watch these episodes, because they're hit with a lot of things that I think people our age are very curious about. I think about all the time. So we have an interesting learning experience here to not only like for us to get to learn from people like you, but from the people that watch to be able to learn from us and people like you. So
they're almost here in the conversation with this as well.
Yeah,
right. Like.
You're on to something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. I mean, I'm not gonna constantly try to sell you on this.
That's okay.
I just do feel strongly after watching these so many weeks now.
I will go, wait, no, my bad. Finish what you're saying.
No, I was just gonna say that you guys have all of the right qualities.
Thank you.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's
you
cool.
have all of them,
Thank you,
and that's not like you can't package that. You it's hard to just have that.
Yeah.
I will tell you now, like doing what I do now as like my actual like what would you call it? What I actually do for my 9-to-5.
Teacher's aide. You're a teacher's aide.
Well, no, but like, what would you call that for me? Because I also do this, and that's separate. So,
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Just my job, basically. I'll say this is the first job that I ever had that I actually do, at least so far, because it's a very short stunt. Love so far.
Oh, okay. I see.
So, every other job I ever had, I absolutely hated, and that was where my want to create this kind of life for myself came from. But now I'm in a weird spot where it's like, obviously I still love doing this and I care about my business and my future a lot more than I do just in that building. But it's the only job I ever have where I enter with a smile and I leave with a smile. I do not enjoy being there. I love it there.
That's how I felt with teaching. I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that end of the spectrum. Like, it is a great gig if you're somebody who cares about the bettering and the development of like our community and the people around us, which I also think is like why we do this, because we're very interested in the bettering of our community and the people around us.
I agree.
So it both comes from the same place of heart, I believe.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I'm also just saying this to look out for you guys. The fact that like there's some advantages of being a teacher that they're not easy to just say because public gets mad and stuff, but like there's a great pension system.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know what I mean? You have, I think, again, we talked about the pay, great healthcare.
Great insurance.
You know, right. Like those things, you earn them, you deserve them, Do you get where I'm going with this? And I think that it makes life better for you.
Yeah.
It's just like you talked about 20, 30 minutes ago, whatever it was, maybe 2 hours ago now, where we basically, this has been great, by the way. I do this for 10 hours if you want. It literally, it goes back to that point we made before, which was like, I lost my train of thought.
That's all right.
That happens a bunch. That's something, you'll get used to that.
Can we talk about, go ahead.
Go ahead, no.
You sure?
Yep.
Can we talk about travel?
Sure.
Okay. How many countries have you been to?
I don't know offhand, but quite a few. I mean, I've been to like every continent except for Antarctica.
Really?
Yeah.
That's dope.
And not every, like South America, I was just in Peru.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I was all over South America.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? In Africa, it was East Africa. And, the Middle East was Syria.
Even saying just that, though, is mind-blowing to me because I've probably been to less than 12 states. Like, that's insane.
It's an American thing, right? Like, we've not, you talked about Europe with the gap year thing. That's a cultural thing. And it's easy for them.
Yeah,
it's
because those countries,
man,
it's all over.
They got trains and cheap flights and stuff like that. So it's easy for them. But travel was great because, I was sort of sucked into it with my friends. And honestly, I got to start by saying that because those guys that I was friends with in high school and in college, they're every bit as important to me as any class I've ever had.
Yeah.
Right? Like any teacher I've ever had, any mentor I've ever had. They're on level with like my parents as being important because being with that crew, having a crew, lucky enough, I'm having on my end, having enough luck to be around a crew like that who all wanted to do that type of stuff and wanted to find creative ways to go to these countries. That was almost as important as going to the countries themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like we didn't always get along when we went on these trips. We debated things and argued, but looking back on it now, all these years later, at so much of that, what I learned was like life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was life. It wasn't really about just going to places and learning about the places. In fact, sometimes that stuff was boring.
Yeah.
It was the experiences of like solving problems together as a group, right?
Yeah.
And like figuring out like even something simple as like where are we going to eat today?
Yeah.
And like what's this menu and how do you translate this?
Yeah.
Or whatever. That type of stuff was every bit as important as like, let's look at the history of this location. You get what I mean?
Yeah, it introduces like the level of grit that you have. I told you this story, like when we went to Athens, and I said this on the podcast before, but when we were in Athens, we were there for a week. And Berlin and I ate donuts, bread, oranges, and peanut butter for 7 days.
I know what that's
and
like.
we had no money.
Yeah. I know what that's like.
And
man.
we stayed in a dirty hostel and walked around, and Berlin and I fought. 100% we did. Our feet hurt. And
it's a tough, uncomfortable situation to be in.
Yeah. But it was I have dreams about that, like being in Europe at least once a week. It changed everything for me.
Like a lot of the negative stuff gets washed away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you don't think about all the arguments you had with him.
Yeah.
You don't think about your feet being sore. You think about the big picture of what you took from it, right?
Yeah, man. And a friend of mine, shout out to Anthony Casper, by the way, good friend of mine. We were together, and he likes to travel too, and him and I just went to a different town one day. Similar to how you and your friends go on walks, me and Anthony go on walks.
Nice, yeah.
So we decided to go to West Pittston and just walk around.
Great little town.
And I find it interesting going back to like the way that the brain works. Like we're so familiar with being in Wilkes-Barre that when we go through all of these little places and stuff like that, our brain has already recognized like where everything is and how everything moves. When you're in a new spot, your mind is just always processing.
Yep.
Like it's just everything is like being a kid.
Yeah.
It's like the world is a fascinating place all over again.
Right.
And when you're in Berlin, Germany, and when I was at the Acropolis and I was seeing these monuments, my mind could not fathom where I was and what I was seeing.
Sure.
And like the different languages around me. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I get it. Yeah, I feel that way about like natural landmarks.
Yeah.
Like seeing I've been to the Grand Canyon a handful of times.
That's
cool.
That's
and
dope.
every time I've been there, it's like, whoa.
Really?
Like it's just a weird it's weird feeling. As simple as it is, like it's just a gigantic canyon, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it is. But you look at it and you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
You know? but to the point, taking what you just said, it's one thing to go to the Grand Canyon and look at it. It's another thing to go down into it.
Yeah.
And to physically walk it, kind of like you did in West Pittston.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of the travel that people do, they get on an airplane and they fly over America. You don't know America. You know what it's like to be on American Airlines flight, whatever. Right? A lot of people get in a car. Oh, I've been to Colorado. You don't know what Colorado is.
Drove through Colorado.
You were on I-70
Yeah.
going west, you know what I'm saying? Which is a crazy highway, by the way. But like you're on that highway and you're not in Colorado.
Yeah.
Like you're in your car as you're doing it.
Yeah.
And walking places, sitting places. I remember in Brisbane, Australia, having a conversation in a food court in a mall, and it was not anything special. There was no special moment. And I remember one of my friends and I, we were talking, we were like, you do realize we're learning right now. Like, we're just looking at these Australians living their lives. Like, I remember it was like summer for us.
Yeah.
It was their winter.
Yeah.
And they were like bundled up in like winter clothes. And it was like 60 degrees outside. You know what I'm saying?
Really?
And there was like a Hungry Jack's, which is Burger King.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess there's some sort of copyright issue, whatever, about Burger King in Australia, but it's the same thing. And I remember thinking like, look at these people living their lives, going to Hungry Jack's.
Yeah.
It's like us at home doing it, but I'm watching them do it, and they're doing it different.
Yeah.
And it was such a simple, non-important moment, but you'll learn something.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, you're learning something about life.
I remember I talked to you in class as a senior about traveling, and you always like had this aversion to like going as a tourist. You really wanted to immersify yourself into what's actually happening there. So I never counted my trip to Jamaica because I was on a resort and I was in Montego Bay.
And they're fun too, though, man.
They're cool.
Like, they're fun too.
But like being in hostels and being like in the hustle and bustle of a different city is like, that's different.
Oh, for sure.
That's different.
Yeah, I mean, like some of the hotels that my friend Mike and I stayed in Africa were just completely insane. You know, like
Didn't you
scary.
sleep in your car a couple times?
We slept in our car so many times. Like that was one of my favorite stories in Australia. I don't really want to get too many stories here,
I know.
But like, you know, just because like those are like
they're special.
Yeah, exactly. But the story is simple in that we were so tired and we just needed to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just days of sleeping in airports and like parks.
Yeah.
And not comfortable places that we were done. We were done. So we just parked the car in a parking lot, and we had this tiny little Hyundai Accent, and we fell asleep. Like our feet were like hanging out the windows and stuff. And we woke up, and we were in the middle of like a farmer's market. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and there were all these people like living their lives. I mean, it wasn't. They were like kind of ignoring us to some degree, but it was like, what? We're so tired.
Yeah.
You know, and just being on flights, like gauging sleeping by like what airport has a bathroom with a shower.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like where could we stay and not spend some money and save some money? That was important.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like you're on the ground level.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The grit of like, weeks and weeks of not showering properly, and your clothes are dirty and you're hanging them up in the hostel on like a rope to just dry your laundry. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Can I ask you for one story?
Which one?
I don't know. I just want to ask you a question, and I wanted to see if you have a story for it.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
What was the most scared that you've ever been in a foreign country?
Oh, that's a good one.
There's been a couple of really scary moments. Well, like travel itself is scary.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
supposed to be,
Yeah.
right? Like that, you're out of your element. You're uncomfortable.
Completely out of your comfort zone.
No one
Exactly.
cares about you. You're just like another
No one
figure.
cares, right?
Yeah.
There's been a few. I think that I told you guys a story about we had back in the old days. We had millennial in me here. We had this book called Let's Go, which was like a book made by Harvard students. They would travel and they would like basically give you tips on where to go, like how much something's supposed to cost so you don't get ripped off. And the book that we used in China had a typo. And it was supposed to have said like 500 units of currency, yuan or whatever it is. And it said 50. I'm giving you the short version of this now. So we didn't know that, right? We thought it was supposed to be 50. Not 500 because it was missing like a zero. So we needed someone to drive us to like a historic site where they had like these terracotta warriors that were like these, this farmer found this army of like clay warriors.
Yeah.
You ever hear that story?
No.
Oh, you got to Google it sometime.
Okay.
And there's like all these warriors that like they architectural dig, and they put like an airport hangar over it. And it's like a tourist attraction in the middle of China, in Xi'an, China. And so we're in Xi'an, we get to the like the bus depot, whatever. We find a guy to take us to drive us because you had to hire a driver, a taxi driver.
Yeah.
And he takes us into a parking lot of like a police station. And this guy spoke zero English and we spoke zero Chinese, zero, you know? And it got to the point to where he was just first he took us to this police station and we were like, what's he going to do? Is he going to like say you guys did something wrong or something? Are we going to go to jail? It wasn't anything like that. It was like a factory that made terracotta warriors. He didn't want to drive to the actual place. He was like, oh, I'll just take you here. Maybe these guys will be happy if I take them here. We were like, what are you doing? So we get back on the highway, and then he goes like down an on-ramp.
Yeah.
And at this point, my friends and I are freaking out, and we're screaming at the top of our lungs at this guy to like turn around.
Yeah.
And you could see at the bottom of the hill, it was like a really poor town. And we're thinking, and he kept getting on his cell phone, his old little Nokia phone, right? He gets on the cell phone, he's talking to somebody. We don't know what he's saying. We're thinking like, this guy's going to rob us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This guy's going to rob us is what's going to happen here. We're about to get robbed. He's driving us. So we had like a conversation. It was very, very brief.
I remember this
about
story.
like, how do we like stop this guy? Do you know what I mean? Like, what do we do?
Yeah.
And it was brief. It all happened really quickly. But we realized that he was just trying to beat the toll for the road because we paid him so little. So he took us all these back roads to get there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it was like the whole experience, we were just terrified.
Yeah.
And together we were terrified.
Yeah.
Not just me.
Yeah.
All of us had the looks on our faces of like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
You know, and there were lots of moments like that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, so those scary moments that happen, you know, they definitely help you grow.
Yeah.
How important would you say travel was, like, in a nutshell, for your overall like growth and personal development?
I mean, it definitely just made me more accepting of other people.
Yeah.
You know, like, especially like living where we do. There's so many different cultures now that come here. You know, people that speak different languages, they come from different countries. And I feel like that definitely helped me understand what they must feel like.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I could remember walking through Nairobi, Kenya. My friend and I were among the only white people.
Yeah.
And that was a complete flip
Yeah.
from what life is typically like for me here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we were the only true like white males. There were so few people that were they were, you know, black Kenyans.
And you're probably getting stared at everywhere you go, huh?
There was a lot of that for sure. China was the worst with that.
Really?
Oh man, because we went there before the Beijing Olympics, and they were like preparing the country. China was like a machine.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they were like a corporate machine. They were a corporate machine.
Yeah.
And they were like training their cab drivers some English. They were like preparing the city for the big 2008 Olympics. This was in 2005. And I remember very, very vividly like going into these train stations and just having crowds of people surround us and like just stare at us, you know? And they would just stare at you and like just look. And you're like, why are these people looking at us?
Whoa.
Like, what is this? And it's just an American aspect. That's just like a rude thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, just sit down and stare at people. It's like they would literally just sit there and look, you know, and then like they call their friend over and like point at us. And we were like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Whoa.
You know, very, very uncomfortable type of thing. And then there were like, one of my friends is very dark skinned. He's Indian. And there were like racial slurs thrown at him.
Wow.
Yeah, that happened to Berlin too.
Did it?
In Athens.
Yeah.
It happened to him, but he's a stoic dude. But Berlin's a savage.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't care.
Nah, he didn't give it.
Yeah.
Berlin's
He doesn't
He's
care.
ready to get after it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's different.
Yeah, right. But like you experienced it, and
Yeah.
it's like, what is this?
Yep.
You know, and that definitely hit hard. That was like a culture shock.
Yeah.
You know, like we got off the bus from Beijing to downtown Beijing, and like one of the guys was like petting my friend's arm. It was like his dark skin arm. We're like, what is this?
Whoa.
You know? So
It's different now. The world is a wild place.
it is.
This rock we live on is a wild place.
Do you
man.
think like people from other countries can tell like when somebody's an American?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Like an American specifically, because you could be like white and be Australian. They don't necessarily know that you're from the United States.
There's small cues. I mean, I haven't been out anywhere in a while.
Yeah.
But there used to be small, subtle cues. You know, I mean, I remember trying to fake that I was Irish a couple of times, which
Really?
was like the most ridiculous faking. I can't even pretend to do the accent.
That's funny.
You know what I mean? Just because I was, and like when we traveled, it was 2005. That was like in the heat of like the Iraq War. And the United States was like a fairly unpopular place globally at that time. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people kind of had some commentary. And funniest thing about it was like being out there in the world. I don't know if you experienced this, but like in American politics, I might not have been aligned with George W. Bush.
I remember this story too.
But then like, man, people debate you and you're like, don't you talk about him. It's like, like what? It's like it's a camaraderie. You know what I mean? It's like as soon as you go somewhere else, you kind of all get right back into that footing.
Yeah, it was weird. Like when I came back from Europe, my dad picked me up in the New York airport, or it was the Newark airport, and I felt like this is the greatest country in the world.
It is a great country.
I felt that way.
Yeah.
And I never had that before in my life. Like I never was like a America kind of dude. And I'm still not that guy, by the way. But when I came back, I was like, this is the greatest country.
Yeah. Because it's also home.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if you're from like, Scandinavia or something, you think Sweden's the best country. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And it's a lot of this is what you grow up with, and it's cultural assimilation. You know what I mean? There's a lot of that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the thing I will say this, like traveling for me, we were talking about generations before. Really quick, I will say this. Traveling in that time period was kind of perfect.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things were still not touristy. Like the world rapidly developed in the last 20 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like we went to places that now are really safe and really sort of choreographed. The whole experience is like put together in such a way that you could be a non-traveler and go there.
Yeah.
And we went to a lot of places where at that time it wasn't. There was the risk.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like there was fear. And it wasn't like we were like, I don't want to make it sound like every moment we took a turn there was some sort of death-defying. That's not true either. You get what I mean? But there was definitely a fear that I had then that I don't think everybody in those same places has today, because they've developed so quickly.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like they've come along so quickly that now you could have a family and take little kids and go to them, when back then it was like that would have been insane.
Well, do you think it's because a lot of these different countries' economy, like a lot of how their economy is built is off tourism? Right?
Oh,
do you think people
no doubt.
Yeah?
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean,
like
they
rely
relatively
on it.
new thing?
Well, you said Jamaica before.
Yes.
Right? Like, I have no idea what Jamaica produces. Maybe rum or something? I have no idea what they produce. Like, it's like, to me, they're tourism.
Yeah.
Right.
That's life.
That's right.
You know what I mean? That's how you make your money in Jamaica, I would imagine.
Right.
They say like 90% of Hawaii's total like
population.
monetary value. Like all the money that circulates through Hawaii, like over 90% of it is tourism money.
I can believe it.
So like when everything with COVID happened and people couldn't travel to like Hawaii, their place was just in shambles.
Sure. Yeah. And actually, now that you say that, I remember thinking one of the first thoughts I had when on that Friday the 13th, when you guys shut down with school, was not just about students like yourself who were graduating. It was also about kids who were maybe a few years older than you, that were maybe my age when I was in college, in the early 20s, that weren't going to be able to go on their trips anymore. You know what I mean? Like paid for trips. And they were going to go around the world. And now that was just shut down and over. There was a lot of I was thinking about a lot of that stuff back then. But I don't know. I mean, you guys obviously have like the itch for travel.
Yeah.
For sure.
So you guys should be teachers and travel.
We'll see. We'll get down to talk about it.
No, I want that to be a big section of my life. Like, hopefully, everything I do now and like the future I have planned right now for myself, I'll be able to, at some point, take a good couple of years away just from everything and just see the planet for what it is. Because that's like truly like an arc of my life I cannot wait for.
Yeah,
I've traveled very minimally. I've been to one different country. It was Canada, and it was when I was very young, so I couldn't really do all the like figuring out of Canada. I couldn't really do any of that because with my grandparents, I was like probably 10 years old. I couldn't really do anything. So I seen that few states, but I just have such a natural like inclination for like being very curious about places that are not just this small city that we're all so used to.
Yeah, because I mean, Wilkes-Barre, you get bogged down here, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's true of anywhere. The other thing I will say is people give this place too bad of a rap sometimes.
I agree.
I
Now,
think that's true.
Like a lot of America's like this.
yeah.
Not all of America is New York City.
No.
Or San Francisco or Houston or whatever. Do you know what I mean? A lot of America looks exactly like this place. And that tells me something. It tells me a lot that people have this image that they just don't like. They want to leave home.
Yeah.
And they want to see other places that aren't home, if that makes sense. But one of the things that is hard about living in Wilkes-Barre is if you do go to college and you get a job that is in zero demand here, you're forced to leave.
Yeah.
Like even if you want to live here and make this community better and bigger and do whatever it is you think you could do to contribute, a lot of times you have no choice but to leave.
Yeah.
If you want to be a banker, you got to leave town.
Was it easy for you to get a job teaching in Wilkes-Barre when you were starting your
So
career?
for me, it was a generational shift.
Yeah.
Back to the generation conversation. There was a wave that crashed. The year that I was hired, like 7 social studies teachers were hired.
Yeah.
So it was a wave. So it wasn't terribly hard. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of people that were leaving, a lot of people that were coming in. Back then, the classes of student teachers were gigantic.
Yeah.
Now there's way less. I would argue it's probably going to be easy the next couple of years to get a job as a teacher. And I didn't say that 5 years ago.
Really?
5 years ago, I would have told you not to do it.
Right now, it seems that way. Like, it seems like it must be a lot, at least just from my perspective, it's a lot easier to get a job in the school district specifically than I feel like it would have been in the past.
There's also, we've got some money now through the COVID funding. You know what I mean? That's been able to help sort of at least temporarily fund some positions. But, I mean, and also the restructuring has been helping. Like, now we've got our money's being put in different places. We're not paying for the old buildings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that definitely matters too. But yeah, I mean, living in Wilkes-Barre is great though. I don't like when people disrespect it.
I agree.
I agree now too.
I don't like it. But at the same time, I'm also not ignorant to think that it's perfection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get what I mean? Like it's not, I'm not going to sit here and also tell you that this is the greatest place on earth because I don't necessarily think that's true. You know, but it's like a normal, good place to raise a family.
Yeah.
It is.
Whether you're in Wilkes-Barre School District or surrounding school districts, it's still a good place to live.
Yeah.
I'm just from the belief that there's no better place to come from than the spot that you came from, because your life would be completely different if you were born anywhere else.
Sure.
But you're right, though. There is like that narrative that everybody wants to get away from Wilkes-Barre. We got to leave here.
I think we all probably had that at least for a year.
I
when we
mean,
were
seniors, forget it.
Yeah.
Every senior I've ever talked to has said, I can't wait till I leave here. And, you know, the reality is most of them don't leave here.
Nope.
Yeah.
You know, most people don't leave here.
I think that's a classic, like, the grass isn't always greener kind of thing.
Yeah,
They want to. A lot of times they want to go back to New Jersey or New York or wherever, and it's like, that place is really no better than this place is.
No.
It might be a little worse, actually.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So.
Yeah, when people say New York, I always sort of am curious what they mean.
Yeah.
Like, especially students that I teach, like, I want to go back to New York. It's like, well, why did you come here to begin with?
Yeah.
A lot of these students were brought here because their families saw, like, a better cost of living and they thought better education.
Yeah.
So they came here. Well, that's a good reason to have come here. And you don't necessarily want to go back. I mean, a lot of these people that I'm talking about, students that I've taught over the years, they're not living in Midtown Manhattan.
No.
You know what I mean? They're in much more challenging neighborhoods in the boroughs.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if that's utopia.
It's definitely not.
But it's home to them, like you guys were saying.
True.
That's to a lot of them.
That is true. But I think I've come across this this discovery not too long ago, maybe a few years ago, but I think there's legit opportunity to like do something in Wilkes-Barre City.
There is.
Like there's a lot of room to go after your endeavors in Wilkes-Barre.
Absolutely.
You know?
It's for all of its disadvantages, there's those other advantages. That you're talking. I think that's where you're going with this.
Yes. Like,
you know,
you could do, like, the room for creativity here is like a new door's open.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like we're waiting for somebody to do something here.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know what you guys, beyond this project that you're working on now, but like, I don't know if there will be a brick and mortar version of this, a storefront that someday exists that has your creativity, your ideas. I don't know if that's going to ever happen.
Yeah.
But if you were to do it somewhere, this might not be a bad place to do it.
I agree.
You get what I'm saying? Like, it's not because of the affordability of real estate and all of those types of things.
There's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of variables as to why you'd want to do what we're doing here. Rather than like most people that do what we do would say, let's go to LA. You're just probably the smallest fish in that pond.
100%.
When there's
100%.
nobody, well, there is a few. There's a few really good people that do what we do here, but it's a very smaller pool.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to work with.
I used to tell the refrigerator story in class.
The refrigerator
Did I ever
story?
tell you that?
I don't remember that one.
I was at a drinking establishment in LA talking to the bartender, and these were all like low-level actors that worked there.
Yeah.
And a couple of high-level actors would come in and frequent the place. And it was like a dive bar in LA, in Hollywood. Yeah. And I was there and just having a drink, talking to the bartender, trying to like pick, you know, their brains about what it's like to live in LA. And the one guy was telling me the story about how a lot of the apartments don't come with refrigerators because a lot of people like come to LA, they get an apartment, they think they're going to become actors, they find no work, and then they sell the refrigerator for like a ticket home.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Like they sell, I mean, I know that's like a ridiculous analogy, but they basically like go broke quickly.
I know what you mean.
Quickly and sell an appliance and bolt out of town.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't know how the leasing would work. I'm not getting into all that sort of stuff, but it's the analogy of like all these people come with these bright eyes of like, this is the place where my dreams are going to be. And they're not. It's not.
It's a vicious world.
Like you said, you're a small fish.
It's another, like, that's one of those big misconceptions, kind of similar to how I was saying before, that it was a misconception in my life that you had to go to school, have a family, get a career, have a job. A lot of people in our field, that's a misconception that you need to go somewhere like LA or Hollywood to be successful in whatever it is that you're doing. But that, I think, is not a reasonable reality.
But what's cool is with this is like right now, as we speak, we have opportunities to travel and do podcasts with people in LA.
Sure.
But it's cool because it's like a two-way, killing two birds with one stone, because we get to go see LA, but we're still rooted here in Wilkes-Barre.
Yeah.
You know, this is always where we're going to return.
Sure.
This is where our roots lie. Like,
right.
There's also opportunities for us to go to potentially the UK and do a podcast.
That
with
would
a
be
guy.
fantastic.
That'd be so cool, man. So
And this doubles like as a catalyst for that as well. We both have a diehard passion for traveling and whatnot too, and this is a vessel to help us achieve that as well.
We can go travel and do a podcast.
There was a time when I worked with a band and we traveled the country, and that was kind of the point for me.
Yeah.
Was to see more of America.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like being in that van, slumming it, like we were talking, like sleeping on the side of the road and some days not always having nice, comfortable, conditions. It was definitely, that was the point, was to go places.
Yeah.
For me, it was. Like, I wasn't a musician in the band. And it was great because you saw America, like, you saw parts of the country that I don't think I'd have a good excuse to go to.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
Yeah.
Have you been to every state so far?
Pretty much, not necessarily in long durations. You know what I mean? I don't want to say like my time in Boise, Idaho was like a night. You know, you get what I'm saying? So it's not like I have a real intimate relationship with that city. But yeah, pretty much most of the country. It's Hawaii. I still want to go there because you said it before.
You never been to Hawaii?
Yeah.
I've never been there either. But is there anywhere else besides like if PA just in a make-believe world wasn't an option for you anymore, like what would be your next best bet and it could be a different country too. Like forget about states. It could be anything. I mean, where would you want to live or like root yourself? I have like a lot of history with New England. Not to say that that's where I would want to live, but I definitely love that part of the country. Yeah. Like Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine. I think it's just beautiful. And also just like culturally kind of feel like I fit in there a little bit. There's a lot of education from there.
There is. Yeah. And there's a lot of similar thinking, stuff like that. Yeah. But also I know people give it like a bad rap, but I think California is amazing. I think California is awesome.
That's where, when I was younger, I wanted to live my whole life.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's like, there's no place like it.
Yeah.
Even in fact, let's just say the whole United States. So the whole United States, think about what we've got. We've got really cold climate, warm climate, big cities, small towns, desert, tundra, right? Like, I mean, the list of all these like 7th grade social studies catchwords, we've got it all here.
Yep.
And not everybody has that.
Yep.
And you could live in this country and see so many different types of living. Like people who live in Alaska live a very different life than people that live in Florida.
Oh, yeah.
True.
But they're Americans.
They're both American.
You know what I mean?
That's a wild way to look at that.
Yeah.
Like their days are different.
Yeah.
Their jobs are different. Their lives are different, but they're both Americans. And that's like probably what makes this place tough to stay together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For that reason, it's tough to keep us always glued together because we are really different. These probably theoretically, I mean, the word state is nation, right? So like this really to some degree was supposed to be like different nations bonding.
Yeah. To a degree it is.
Exactly.
What if the US was like Europe and like each state was a different country?
Well, I'll tell you this, during COVID, that started to feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because every state had like individual things that they were doing, and it almost felt like through that time, like we were Pennsylvanians because everything that was happening in the world was specific to where we were too. It was just very different than, let's say, like New Jersey or New York.
Right. But then remember we had like these pacts together with like New York and New Jersey for like, cause we'll do the same thing you're doing.
Yeah.
It was like, so what we're explaining is America.
Yeah.
It's like, let's do this. Let's be states and then let's come together. It was really bizarre. That whole thing. But that was like a total lesson in federalism, man. Like the idea of like all the states with their different philosophies and how they were going to go approach COVID.
Yeah.
And, you saw politics play out in government.
Yeah.
Which was really sort of fascinating. something that we don't see a lot. You know?
I learned a lot during that time about how our government works.
It's a lot of, I mean, even you guys know in education, like a lot of laws are state laws.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like,
you know,
I thought it was like if the country had a law, every state had to follow that.
Yeah.
But it's that's not like how
to a degree.
There's federal laws.
Yeah, there's mandates.
Yeah,
right.
Where
But,
every state has to follow. But
right. But there's so much room to be your own.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's the thing about like, I know people always focus on taxes, because it's like a big deal.
Sure.
You know, of course it is. But like the culture within that state, like the culture of California and the culture of like, I don't know, like South Carolina or something, they're different.
Yeah.
You know, and that's for a lot of reasons. They're different. So, yeah, but that was like a weird time. Yeah. Just seeing that.
What a time.
Mr. O'Day.
Yeah.
Speaking of going to LA and selling refrigerators, I got to ask you another story.
Which one?
How'd you meet John Krasinski
Oh my goodness.
from The Office?
Yeah, John Krasinski. I'll have to give you the picture. Maybe you could put it on
I
here or
saw it.
something.
Yeah, I saw it on
Yeah,
IG, and that's
yeah.
why. Yeah, we'll put it right there.
It was-
flag it.
It was so we were at a concert. We were at a Dave Matthews Band concert, and John Krasinski was. This was again. This is like we're tying it all together, man.
Yeah.
Tying it all together. Being the Gen X millennial borderline person that I am.
Yeah.
The concert was in the year 2000, and it was at Giant Stadium, and I was on the floor with a few of my friends, and this guy was next to us with a few of his friends, and he was so pumped to be at the show. He was way more excited than anyone I've ever seen to be at a show in my life. He was so excited. And I had, he had a camera, one of those box cameras. You guys still see those? Are they still around?
Wait,
like,
what kind? Like
the kind that you just point and then you have to go get it developed. I think they're long gone now.
Oh yeah, no, a lot of like kids our age, like are you talking about like
no, I don't think he's talking about the ones you take and then like the film comes
Nope,
out.
not that. Not
yeah.
that. Like you go and you get it developed. Do they still have them? I feel like they're coming back.
well, like the red rooms and stuff where you like would actually get like an actual picture
Yeah.
developed. I know what you mean, but I
Right.
can't like visualize.
So we didn't have cell phone. We had cell
Yeah.
phones. We didn't have cell phone cameras. So you had to take the idea of a selfie was like so primitive.
Yeah.
You took
Yeah.
a camera, flipped it around backwards, and clicked it. And this was a box camera.
Yeah.
These were throwaways. You buy the camera in a container.
Oh, those.
And then
yes.
you take it to the drugstore.
Yes.
And then the drugstore develops the film, and then your camera's gone. You
Yeah.
never have that camera
Yeah.
again. You know what I'm talking
Disposable cameras.
about.
That's
Correct.
what
So
we
they,
call
they
it.
still exist?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
I was gonna say like there's like that's like a resurging thing in our generation is like
thought it
because of
was.
how desensitized we are to like video and picture. You could just take a picture on your phone whenever you want.
Right.
People like those, and I honestly could make the argument that I think disposable camera pictures look a lot better sometimes.
Oh, yeah?
Oddly enough.
Yeah.
Just
I mean,
the
well, it's
aesthetic.
probably
of it.
more organic.
There's like a cool filter.
Yeah.
To it as well. Some
Well,
of
you
them.
certainly can't, like, redo it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get one try.
Yeah.
And
You
you
know what I mean?
remember, like I can go and look at like 100 different pictures in my phone, and I can absolutely remember those moments.
Yeah.
But I feel like the ones where you have a specific like actual picture, it's very easy to like recall that exact memory of you taking that picture.
Right. Well, that's exactly what happened with John Krasinski. So John Krasinski was an intern for Conan O'Brien, who was the show after Jay Leno at night.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was just an intern. He went to Brown University, and we're there at the show, and he was so excited about it. And I was like, back then, like in high school, I used to be involved with like there used to be like a subculture of people who traded tapes of the shows. So if you went to a concert, people would put up like a microphone like this on a high boom, point it out, and then record the show, and then you'd send it to people because you wanted to relive it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
wanted to relive the show. This is
Yeah.
pre-YouTube, pre all that stuff. So I was like, man, I could get you a copy of this show if you want. Just do me a favor. You're so much fun. Like I was hanging out, chatting with them. We were having a blast. I said, just do me a favor. When I send it to you, send me the picture of us.
Yeah.
And this was a stranger named John. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then he sends it to me, and I get it, and I'm like, oh, cool. And he put a little note in there. You know what I mean? I still have the note. And I just I slid it into like a container I had of all my old high school photos. And then like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little bit more now, I remember I was going through those old photos, flipping open, and I open it, and I look, and I'm like, what is this? Right?
Yeah.
And I see the letter, and I see the name, J. Krasinski, Brown University, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it's a letter from him, like, Erik, I had such a great show, you know, it was great. And he sent me the picture, and I'm looking, I'm like, that's John Krasinski.
Yeah.
Like, for like a decade plus, I had no concept that was the same John Krasinski.
Wow.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean? And it was like a random selfie,
Yeah.
you know, before that was a thing.
So you guys just happened to be in the same vicinity of this concert.
Yeah, I mean, he was unknown intern.
Yeah.
He was a theater major at Brown.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm in the seat right next to him. and we're enjoying the show, and he was having the time of his life, man.
Yeah.
I'll never forget how much fun he was having at that concert.
Yeah.
That's why I offered to get him a copy of it, because I was like, I knew I could do that for him. And I was like, just get me a picture of that, because I know I want to remember this. Like you said, I want to remember this. And it was funny because it's John Krasinski, you know what I mean?
Well, his story is like he went to LA to become an actor, and he was just just ready to give up. And I think he called his mom, and his mom was like, just stay there for one more week. And then he ended up getting the opportunity to play in The Office.
That's awesome.
I think that's how that works.
But I will say this, not to completely go back into Outliers here.
But
he also went to Brown for theater.
Yeah.
And he was also an intern at Conan O'Brien.
Yeah.
Right.
He had some path.
Yeah.
Do you get where I'm going here?
Right.
He wasn't the refrigerator guy.
That was supposed to happen. Like, you can tell. I mean, it seems that way to me. Like, just how certain things set themselves up. Sometimes it just seems like it was written that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely he was set up for some success.
Yeah.
Maybe not to the degree.
He's doing the Smart Pot commercial now.
You know. No.
You didn't see it, the Super Bowl commercial, and it was for a car, and they were in Boston, and the car could park itself.
Love it.
And they were saying, Smart Park.
I love it.
And that was the thing.
He's a Boston guy. Yeah. It's funny because I actually have friends from up that way who knew him in high school, but like through friends of friends. He was from Newton. Yeah, Newton, Mass.
Wow, cool, man. And I got to ask him another story. Just last one. Last one. I remember you told me you met Muhammad Ali, too. How'd that happen?
At a urinal in Indiana at a gas station.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Of all places,
In
that's
Indiana,
the worst place to run into somebody you probably really want to talk to. Right?
Weird story. Another weird one. So this is, again, Gen X, millennial bridge.
Yeah.
The year was probably 2002, I would say. And my friends and I were in a van. We were going to Chicago, and so we go to the gas station, and I remember very, very clearly walking into the gas station and no one caring. Like, it's a rest stop. Gas station.
Yeah.
And then I remember I was at a urinal, so that's that.
Yeah.
And next to me was a guy with Parkinson's, shaking. And I remember thinking
that. Oh, damn.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, wow, that's like Muhammad Ali. Not that's Muhammad Ali, but man, that's like Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
And then walking out of it, all these people were waiting. So I walked into the bathroom, nobody cared. And I went to the bathroom, washed my hands, blah, blah, blah. I walked out, and I'm behind the guy with Parkinson's. And as we walk out, all these people are waiting with, like, cameras and stuff because it was Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Oh, my
You know
God.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, it was him. It was actually Muhammad Ali. And, like,
Wow.
it was with his daughter, and she had, like, a Suburban, and they kind of whisked him away fairly quickly.
Yeah.
We did get a quick picture, like, right in front of the window
Wow.
of his when he was in the passenger seat.
Wow.
It was, like, a little bit intrusive, but,
Wow.
you know. But, yeah, that was the other weird one.
Yeah.
But, you know, all these stories, as ridiculous as they are, and they have, like, no true value in education, they only happen because you get out and do things.
Yeah.
True.
You
No,
know
you
what I
lived you lived a very, like, interesting life.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
You're living an interesting life. You're not gone yet.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I mean, I don't know.
Still
I know
young.
We're probably wrapping this up soon, so I got to ask you guys, like, what do you guys want to do with your life? Do you have families in mind, or what's the plan?
Well,
Kev, you go first.
Man. I mean, I want to break the generational curse of my family. That's, I guess, since you mentioned family, I could start with that. There's a lot of things I want to do for my family, but I guess specifically, and it might sound bad, but like in the root of what started this all for me, it was pretty selfish. Like, I needed to figure out a way to change my life. Like, I had to figure it out for me, and I had to figure out something else that I was passionate about, and I had to find a route that I can take for myself, for me to be successful. And man, I mean, it's so many different intricate parts, like, to sum this all up. But I don't know, when I found this, like, because I had a want to, like, start a podcast and to do a podcast and talk to people for probably like a year and some change before I actually started doing it. And then when I finally did it, and I felt like I was good at it, and it gave me like a weird rush of like adrenaline and energy. And I don't know how much like you knew about me prior to doing any of this, but I was the last person you would expect to ever start a podcast or to like be talking to people. It just was not me. I was very antisocial when I was younger. I didn't really like breaking that comfort zone, but I found a huge love for it. And it might be like a young dumb trait. I don't know how, like, what your take on it would be, but I genuinely see myself living the life I'm living right now forever. Not like me and my thoughts and how I actually live my life
That's
doing
not
that
dumb.
forever, but
Not dumb at all.
like my emotions towards life, like how happy I am, how energetic I wake up sometimes to do things that I'm genuinely passionate and I care a lot about, and just doing all of this, like I genuinely have found purpose in life, and I just want to see where that goes.
That's great.
So I don't know.
That sounds awesome. I mean, the only thing I would add though, and this isn't a criticism and don't take it this way, is sometimes life sneaks up on you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And then you start to get to the point you're like, am I going to miss my shot at something?
Yeah.
You get what I mean? Like there's things like families and stuff that people say put it off, and then they realize like maybe I shouldn't put this off.
Yes.
You get where I'm going with that?
I think as a species, like humans were very adaptive creatures, but I think me more than a lot of people. My whole life I've had to adapt. So I've had to adapt to a lot of different things in life. I think that's one thing, like adversity and being able to adapt. I think I handle that pretty well. I try not to get too emotional with certain things that like I can see logically and understand why they're happening. So I hope I can carry that knowledge with me going forward as well. Like if I do ever run into a brick wall, and granted, like behind the scenes, like with this, we've ran into 1,500 brick walls. So I think at least now in life, and again, I'm young, I'm very unknowledgeable to a lot of what life will hold for me in the future. But I think whenever those problems do arise themselves, I like to think that I can figure out anything that's put before me.
It's great.
So
you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but when you said break the generational curse, what do you mean?
Well, funnily enough, nobody really in my family ever went to college, including me. Well, I went to college, but I didn't finish college. And I did have to see like my parents do things that they did not want to do for a long time. And I knew in certain ways it definitely broke them. Both of my parents are great and they're doing great now. But I definitely had to see some trouble, and especially like on my mom's behalf, like because I lived with my mom for the majority of my life and she had to struggle a lot. But my mom is a very good person. So people like her, and then like even my sister had to struggle a lot in life. My sister's a good person. She has great kids. I just want to be able to do for them what I was never able to do before. Because like I was saying before, I was very selfish when I was younger. I was all about myself. I didn't really, not that I didn't care a lot about my family, but I care a lot more about my family now than I did then.
Sure.
And I definitely want to break the curse of just in my family, and not that everybody living in my family right now feels this way, but just that like misery of not achieving what it was that they wanted to do. Because my mom wanted to my mom's heavily into beauty. She's done cosmetology her whole life, and she's owned different stores and salons and whatnot, but it never really worked out. And I always wondered, like I said before, my mom's a great person. I wonder how much better of a person she would have been if she actually did something she really cared about and didn't have kids so early, because we definitely stunted her life in a way that could happens. Never change.
Sure, that happens.
So I just want to make up for all of that. I guess I could say, because in a way, I mean, I'm sure like parents don't look at it this way, but in a way at the time, I'm sure we didn't ruin her life, but we ruined the potential for her future to be the best that it could have been.
I get it.
So I guess I want to make up for that.
I could strangely relate to some degree. I'm the first generation to graduate college.
Yeah.
You know, and like a lot of my family never graduated high school.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's weight there. It's big.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's definitely like, I think about it more than I used to.
Yeah.
You know,
and I'm sure he feels very similar as well, because we come from the same family. He and I are both cousins. I don't know if you
remember
that,
a while ago I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we share a lot of these same family figures and people that we know that didn't necessarily become very successful in life. And I don't want that for my family going forward.
Is that how you feel too?
Yeah, for sure. Like I can relate heavily on what he's saying. I really want to break like this generational curse. It feels like, especially a lot with my family. That's like heavily involvement in drugs and people going to jail and alcoholism and stuff like that and addiction. So, and you talk about the ripple effect, like how that can affect generations of people.
Yep.
Between drama and mental health issues and stuff like that. Like I want to spearhead my name, the Tyson name, in a different way. I want the people that come from me and the people that I came from to live happier lives, to see a different perspective and to have better opportunities. So I wish to be in the position. I want to create a path for myself, to put myself in the position to help them, put them in position to live better lives, to enhance their lives. But I also think like I can't pinpoint what it is that I want to do, but I like this idea of like working on a project basis. you know, like coming up with an idea, and that idea being so like having so much fuel in me that I have to achieve it. Like I have to do it. Like I had that idea of feeding 100 people in Wilkes-Barre City.
It's a fantastic thing.
And it just came in like, and I was like, damn, how can I make this happen? Like, how can we do this? And we talked to Kevin about it, and we're just like, dude, we can do this, like 100%. And so this project basis, in Europe, and I'm very passionate about fitness and health and stuff like that. So in Europe, Berlin and I, we worked out at calisthenics parks.
Yep.
So
outdoor ones, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking like, dude, how can I build one of those in Wilkes-Barre?
Yeah.
Like, what if I just continue to like fulfill these projects that I thought were like that really moved me?
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, and I don't know how that works to.
I think I heard you talk about on the one with Mayor Brown.
Yeah.
You're talking about that.
The park, yeah.
And he wasn't fully getting the idea of what you were getting at. I think that you were talking about a more centralized, large scale, not like separate things at Kirby Park. You know what I mean? So that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so
it would be.
I'm actively trying to do that, and I think I will do it.
Yeah.
But and I'm also I don't know. I want to create a better life for me, for my family, for my community, and I want to, honestly, as crazy as it sounds, I want to change the world somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want to leave. I want to have a legacy. Maybe that's my ego talking. Maybe that's
awesome, man.
I want to create a legacy. I really admire the people throughout history who were able to leave their footprint here.
Yeah.
So how can I do that?
That's great.
That's authentic from my soul, and that's pure, a true expression of who I am.
I think you guys are both going to do it.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate it.
For real. I mean, and it's honestly, this has been awesome to do this. I was a little nervous about this.
Yeah.
You know, doing this whole thing, because it's just like a little bit out of my own personal comfort zone.
Yeah.
You know, doing this right now, but it is. When you were talking about all these things that in the last couple minutes here, you're just sort of explaining how I feel about everything. Like we're all on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's the coolest part about teaching, was having at least some students care.
Yeah.
You know, not everybody cared. I'm not naive.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I didn't impact everybody, but I think I impacted enough people where I was like, I've done something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the same thing goes with you were saying, like the family thing, like making them proud and doing something different and taking it up a step.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, that's like that's hard to put into words.
It is.
It's part of the wild, crazy life that we live. And because like one of the things I always say, it's like one of my sayings damn near at this point, but I just like saying, and it's been in my, I think we said this on the last podcast, but it's been in my YouTube description ever since I like created my channel on YouTube, and it just says it is possible. And I think that relates to like everybody and what we're chasing or trying to achieve. Because like you were saying before, we live completely different lives, but at the root, we all want to go to the same place. Mm-hmm. We all want happiness. We all want success. We all want
fulfillment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We all want to, at the end of the day, know that we did this, one, to the best of our ability, and that we did it the right way. Mm-hmm. And I think, boom, right? Mic drop.
Yeah.
Mr. O'Day.
It's been a pleasure, man.
Thank
you very much.
You call me Erik.
I don't know if I can.
That's a hard thing to shake. We were talking about that the other day, but I will say, because I remember we were talking yesterday on the phone, and you were saying you didn't know how like entertaining you'd be for our audience or whatever. And I will say, this podcast is now to hit 2 hours and 10 minutes. You're probably our first 2 hour plus podcast in like 10 episodes. So
I'm honored.
Yeah,
thank you.
Honored.
It was a great time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Of course.
Really, like I said, when I watched this, I want to watch it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You guys are doing something great.
Thank you, man.
It's for times like this. Like I'm getting goosebumps and shit just talking about these things. But this is like what fires me up. Mm-hmm. Not even just conversation, but like these conversations about just like our future and our life. Like that stuff really fires me up.
Yeah. And it's actually been a little bit therapeutic. I don't get to do this all the time anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Most people don't.
So
and that's
great.
It's a weird reality about conversation is like we don't really get to do this. How many times a day, a week, a month do you just sit down with, especially us, because we don't really talk at all outside of like doing this. So I didn't know very much about you prior, but it's like, how often do people such as ourselves get to sit down for over 2 hours and just talk without phones? I don't even know where my phone is right now. Like, how often in life do we really get to do that anymore? And I think at the root of what we are, this is like the best way to handle life, is just to talk to people, communicate. It's the only way to figure things out.
I agree. I agree, man. Thank you.
Well,
It's been great.
Yeah, thanks.
Mr. O'Day, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And maybe in due time, we'll do another one.
absolutely.
Anytime.
Great.
Let me know.
We got to hit a couple countries, travel around a little bit, and then
Yeah,
we'll
maybe
go
I'll,
on some
maybe
of our
I'll
own
go
travel
on,
stories.
on satellite location with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me know when you do Hawaii.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
I'll go along for that one.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Say
Yeah.
less.
Say that. We'll make a pact.
Well,
All right.
man, this was a banger episode. I think everybody will really enjoy this, especially our Myers people, everybody that we went to school with.
We're at
that knows-
GR.
Yeah.
The irony, right?
Yeah, it is.
The irony of
It
being
is.
at GAR for this.
Yeah.
But-
That is very ironic. We tried to make the Myers thing happen.
We won that last football game, though, so
Oh, yeah.
come on.
Boom. This has been an honor. Erik O'Day,
Thank you very much.
for
Thanks,
being
guys.
here.
I appreciate
And
it.
All right.
It was
Go
our
get us
pleasure.
podcast. Oh, do you want anybody to follow your Instagram?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Okay.
No?
Oh, right.
Well,
Thank
Erik
you.
O'Day.
All right.
Know him and love
Peace.
him. Boom.
See ya.